Hey everyone, welcome back to another Harry. Today we're diving into an amazing story called What If Wednesday Entered Hogwarts and Exposed Every Professor's Secret including Dumbledore's. If you love these stories, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us bring more content to you. Without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 1, The Girl Who Dissected the Castle loomed against the night sky as Wednesday Addams stepped off the thestral-drawn carriage, her pitch-black eyes reflecting nothing. The skeletal horses snorted and pawed nervously at her presence, sensing something kindred yet wrong in the pale girl with twin braids and a perpetual expression of dispassionate interest. "You can see them too?" Luna Lovegood asked, materializing beside her like a ghost, her radish earring swinging in the winter wind. Wednesday didn't blink. "The Thestrals? Of course. Death and I are old acquaintances." She didn't wait for Luna's response, instead walking toward Hogwarts with her small, battered trunk floating behind her. It occasionally snapped its brass teeth at students who got too close. The trunk had been a gift from Uncle Fester for her 13th birthday, made from the wood of a hangman's tree and lined with the shroud of a particularly vengeful Romanian countess. Professor McGonagall waited at the entrance, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Miss Addams, we've been expecting you. Though I must say, midterm transfers are highly irregular." Wednesday tilted her head slightly. So was the explosion at Ilvermorny. Apparently, reanimating a founding father's remains for historical accuracy is considered desecration rather than thorough research. McGonagall's eyebrows shot up, but she composed herself quickly. "Yes, well. Headmaster Dumbledore has arranged for you to be sorted immediately and join classes tomorrow. Follow me." As Wednesday walked through the great hall, conversations died. Students craned their necks to stare at the girl in the black dress with the white collar, her skin nearly translucent against the dark fabric. She scanned the room methodically, noting escape routes, structural weaknesses, and the magical signatures of everyone present. "Bloody hell," Ron Weasley whispered to Harry Potter at the Gryffindor table. "She looks like she's cataloging who to murder first." Harry watched the girl pass, a strange chill settling over him. Maybe she is. At the front of the hall, McGonagall gestured to the sorting hat, perched on its usual stool. "Sit, Miss Addams." Wednesday complied, and the ancient hat was lowered onto her head. The moment it touched her braids, it let out a shriek that echoed through the hall. "Good heavens and Merlin's beard," the hat screamed, writhing atop her head. "The things in this mind. The darkness. The... Wait, is that a recipe for regenerating limbs using only moon water and salamander hearts?" "Fascinating, actually." Students exchanged glances as the hat fell silent, apparently engaged in private conversation with Wednesday. After nearly 5 minutes, the longest hat stall in recent memory, the hat shuddered. "Ravenclaw," it announced, sounding both relieved and disturbed. "And please, for the love of magic, don't try that experiment with the ravens and the time turner. The multiverse isn't ready." Wednesday removed the hat, giving it a small nod of respect before heading toward the Ravenclaw table. As she sat down, the nearest student scooted away, creating a perfect circle of emptiness around her. Except for one person. "I'm Luna," said the blonde girl from the carriages, sliding closer. "Most people call me Loony." "Most people lack imagination," Wednesday replied, studying the ceiling where enchanted clouds swirled. "This castle has seen 14 murders and 23 suspicious disappearances. I can feel it in the stones." Luna's protuberant eyes widened slightly. "I think it's more. The ghosts only represent a fraction of the deaths." Wednesday's lips curved upward at the corners, not quite a smile, but the closest approximation her face could manage. "We'll get along splendidly." Potions class the next morning provided Wednesday's first opportunity to demonstrate her particular talents. Professor Snape swept into the dungeon, robes billowing dramatically behind him. "We have a new student," he drawled, black eyes settling on Wednesday with immediate suspicion. "Miss Addams, transferred from Ilvermorny." I understand American magical education is remedial at best. Wednesday stared back, unblinking. Professor Snape. Your reputation precedes you. My family's grimoire mentions your contributions to the draft of Living Death. Though I believe Uncle Fester's modified version produces more authentic results, the victim actually experiences their burial. The class froze. Snape's expression flickered between shock, suspicion, and something almost like professional interest. You will work alone today, Miss Adams. Prepare the blood-replenishing potion on page 394. We'll see if your family knowledge translates to actual skill. The class worked in tense silence, with many students stealing glances at Wednesday. She moved with methodical precision, occasionally consulting the textbook only to disregard its instructions entirely. When she added powdered moonstone directly after the salamander blood, explicitly warned against in the text, Hermione Granger made a small, distressed noise from across the room. Miss Adams, Snape's voice cut through the dungeon, what exactly do you think you're doing? Wednesday didn't look up. Improving the formula. The standard recipe creates a 3-hour effective duration with the side effect of elevated heart rate. By reversing the addition of moonstone and armadillo bile and introducing a counterclockwise stir after each ingredient, the duration extends to 5 hours with no cardiovascular impact. Snape glided to her workstation, examining the perfect crimson liquid that smelled faintly of copper and roses. He dipped an empty vial into the cauldron, held it to the light, then sniffed it carefully. The Adams modification, he murmured, eyes narrowing. I've heard it referenced but never seen it documented. His voice rose to address the class. Continue working. Miss Adams, a word outside. In the corridor, Snape studied Wednesday with renewed intensity. How does a fifth-year student know an obscure potion modification that isn't included in any standard text? We brew it monthly at home. Mother uses it when she practices Spanish Inquisition reenactments with father. Authenticity requires significant blood loss. Your family sounds unconventional. Wednesday tilted her head. Conventional is just a word people use to hide their fears. She paused, dark eyes unblinking. You smell like asphodel and wormwood, with traces of something antediluvian. You're working on something beyond the curriculum, Professor. Something old. Snape stepped back, almost imperceptibly. Return to class, Miss Adams. And 5 points to Ravenclaw for historical brewing knowledge. By lunch, rumors about the new girl had spread throughout Hogwarts. Wednesday found herself approached by a round-faced Gryffindor boy clutching a struggling plant. Excuse me, he said nervously. I'm Neville Longbottom. I heard what you did in potions, and I wondered if, well, I have this Mimbulus Mimbletonia that isn't thriving, and Professor Sprout said it needs special care, but the greenhouse doesn't have Venezuelan devil's soil, Wednesday interrupted, examining the plant. And feeding it 3 drops of blood under a waxing moon. Neville blanched. Blood? Just a pinprick's worth. Plants like this one evolved in symbiosis with magical creatures whose blood was absorbed through the soil. She produced a small silver knife from her sleeve. I can show you tonight. Before Neville could respond, a high-pitched hem-hem interrupted them. A toad-like woman in pink stood nearby, a saccharine smile plastered on her face. Miss Adams, isn't it? Dolores Umbridge said sweetly. I'm Professor Umbridge, Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher and High Inquisitor of Hogwarts. I understand you've had some disciplinary issues at your previous school. Wednesday regarded her impassively. I had philosophical differences with the faculty regarding the boundaries between life and death. Well, here at Hogwarts, we have very clear boundaries, particularly regarding dark arts, Umbridge simpered. I'll expect you in my class after lunch. Do try to leave any unorthodox practices behind. As Umbridge waddled away, Luna appeared beside Wednesday. She's infested with Raxperts, Luna whispered. The worst case I've ever seen. It's not Raxperts, Wednesday replied. It's fear. She reeks of it. Her eyes followed Umbridge. Fear is always more dangerous than malice. Defense against the dark arts proved to be exactly the showcase Wednesday had anticipated. She sat beside Luna, a copy of Defensive Magical Theory open before her, though her attention was fixed on Umbridge. Today we'll continue our reading of Chapter 3, Umbridge announced. There will be no need to talk. Professor, Wednesday raised her hand, I've already completed the text. Twice. I have questions about its practical applications. The class tensed, several students shooting warning glances at Wednesday. Harry Potter, sporting a bandaged hand, looked particularly alarmed. Questions can wait until the entire class has finished the assigned reading, Umbridge replied, her voice honey-sweet but eyes cold. My question pertains to the author's assertion that countercurses are misleadingly named, Wednesday continued as if Umbridge hadn't spoken. Specifically, his failure to address Grindelwald's principle of magical resonance, where certain defensive spells actually draw power from the dark magic they're countering. The room fell silent. Umbridge's face tightened. We do not discuss Grindelwald's principles in this classroom, Miss Adams. Interesting, Wednesday replied. At Ilvermorny, we found studying the magical theories of dark wizards essential to understanding effective countermeasures. For instance, the Cruciatus curse can be partially deflected using detention. Umbridge's voice rose sharply. Tonight, my office, 5 o'clock. We do not discuss the unforgivable curses in this classroom. Wednesday tilted her head. Yet how can we defend against what we refuse to understand? By dinner, the Hogwarts rumor mill had elevated Wednesday Adams to near-mythic status. The girl had questioned Umbridge directly, impressed Snape, and apparently agreed to perform some blood ritual with Neville Longbottom. The Weasley twins had already tried to recruit her for something involving experimental sweets, which she declined with the cryptic response that she only experimented on family members or volunteers with signed waivers. At precisely 5 o'clock, Wednesday knocked on Umbridge's office door. The sickeningly pink interior, adorned with mewling kitten plates, contrasted sharply with the pale girl in black. Sit down, Umbridge directed, indicating a small desk with parchment and a quill. You'll be writing lines. I must not discuss dark magic. How many times? Wednesday asked, picking up the black quill. Until the message sinks in, Umbridge smiled unpleasantly. Wednesday began to write. As the words appeared on the parchment in shining red ink, identical letters carved themselves into the back of her hand. She paused, examining the wound with detached interest. A blood quill, she observed. My grandmother collected these. She used one to write her memoirs, 1,000 pages. By the end, she'd lost enough blood to fill a bathtub. She continued writing, her expression unchanged despite the deepening cuts. She said the pain helped her remember the details more vividly. Umbridge, who had been watching for signs of distress, shifted uncomfortably. Continue your lines, Miss Adams. The enchantment on this one is quite elegant, Wednesday continued, writing steadily. Though not as powerful as the Black family version that draws blood directly from the heart. One false stroke and the writer dies instantly. Gran Meerfump called it the editor's ultimate critique. After an hour, when most students would have been fighting tears, Wednesday had filled 3 parchments with perfect, blood-inked lines. Her hand was a mess of wounds, but she showed no discomfort. In fact, she seemed almost disappointed when Umbridge, looking slightly ill, finally dismissed her. Same time tomorrow, Umbridge said, trying to maintain her authoritative tone. Wednesday examined her mutilated hand with something approaching fondness. I look forward to it. Perhaps tomorrow I could bring my own quill. It's made from a thestral feather soaked in banshee tears. The cuts last for weeks. Umbridge's face paled. That won't be necessary. You're dismissed. Over the next few days, Wednesday established a routine. She attended classes, displaying an uncanny knowledge of magical subjects that frequently contradicted the curriculum. She spent evenings in the library, researching Hogwarts history with a focus that made even Madame Pants uncomfortable. And she began cataloging the secrets of Hogwarts, beginning with its faculty. Her first discovery came from simple observation. During the waxing quarter moon, she and Neville were in the greenhouse, performing the blood-feeding ritual for his Mimbulus Mimbletonia, when she noticed Professor Flitwick hurrying across the grounds toward the Forbidden Forest. "He's right on schedule," Wednesday noted, pricking Neville's finger with a silver needle. "Schedule for what?" Neville asked, wincing as his blood dripped onto the plant's soil. "Every quarter moon. He leaves the castle at exactly 10:47 p.m. She watched as the tiny professor disappeared into the trees. 3 drops is sufficient, Neville. More would overstimulate growth." "How do you know about Professor Flitwick's schedule?" Neville asked, wrapping his finger in a handkerchief. "I've been mapping the faculty's movements. Patterns reveal secrets." She leaned closer to examine the Mimbulus, which had already developed a healthy purple blush. "The plant is responding well. Your blood has strong magical properties." "Thanks," Neville said uncertainly. "But about Flitwick, let's follow him." Before Neville could protest, Wednesday was moving silently toward the forest, her black dress making her nearly invisible in the darkness. Reluctantly, he followed. They tracked Flitwick deep into the woods, stopping when they heard voices. Concealed behind an ancient oak, they observed a small clearing where Flitwick stood surrounded by a dozen goblins. He spoke to them in rapid gobbledygook, occasionally demonstrating complex wand movements. "He's teaching them wand magic," Wednesday whispered. "Forbidden by wizarding law since 1631. Neville's eyes widened. "But why would he? He's part goblin. The wizarding world discriminates against his kind, denying them wand rights." Wednesday watched the lesson with approval. "He's subverting an unjust system." They retreated before being discovered, but Wednesday had already filed away this first secret in her mental catalogue. Back at the greenhouse, she helped Neville secure his now thriving plant. "We shouldn't tell anyone," Neville said nervously. "Flitwick could get in serious trouble." Wednesday studied him. "You understand the value of secrets, Neville Longbottom. Not just keeping them, but knowing when they protect and when they poison." She nodded approvingly. "That's why your plants trust you." The following day, she discovered Professor Trelawney's secret quite by accident. Seeking a quiet place to practice a particularly volatile charm from the Adam's Grimoire, Wednesday climbed to the rarely used North Tower. She found the divination professor sprawled on a divan, surrounded by empty sherry bottles and muttering incoherently. Wednesday approached silently, intending to leave unnoticed, when Trelawney suddenly sat bolt upright, her eyes rolling back to show only whites. "The daughter of darkness walks these halls," Trelawney intoned, her voice deep and unnatural. "She will uncover what has been hidden, expose what has been buried. The one with the lightning scar faces not one fate but many when death's child reveals the old man's greatest lie." Trelawney collapsed back onto the divan, snoring softly. Wednesday stood perfectly still, analyzing what she had just witnessed. A true prophecy, not the theatrical pronouncements Trelawney made in class. Interesting that the woman actually possessed the sight but concealed it beneath a haze of alcohol and dramatic performance. Most interesting of all, Wednesday wasn't entirely sure whether the prophecy referred to her, though "daughter of darkness" certainly fit. Death's child. The Addams family had intimate relationships with death through generations of necromancers and death omens. And she was certainly uncovering secrets. The old man's greatest lie clearly referred to Dumbledore. Wednesday had sensed something off about the headmaster from their first meeting, his twinkling eyes concealed calculations, his grandfatherly demeanor a masterful performance. She memorized the prophecy word for word before silently leaving the tower. This secret required deeper investigation. Luna proved to be an invaluable ally in Wednesday's growing mission. The blonde Ravenclaw knew Hogwarts' hidden spaces intimately and had an encyclopedic knowledge of school rumors and legends. More importantly, she accepted Wednesday's macabre interests without judgment. The professors are hiding something behind the portrait of Barnabas the Barmy, Luna said one evening as they worked in an abandoned classroom. I've seen McGonagall, Flitwick, and even Snape going there at odd hours. Wednesday was disassembling a complex magical lockbox she'd found in the Room of Hidden Things. The Room of Requirement. It transforms based on the user's needs. Her slender fingers work delicately with a set of silver tools. But there's a specific configuration they're using. How do you know about the room? Luna asked. Hogwarts, a history doesn't mention it, but there are references in Salazar's private journals. The castle speaks to those who listen. Luna nodded as if this made perfect sense. What's in the box? Evidence. The lock finally clicked open, revealing a collection of pressed plants. Professor Sprout's private herbology collection. Extinct magical species, preserved and hidden. Luna leaned closer. Some of these are classified as Class A non-tradable materials by the Ministry. Devil's snare crossbred with venomous tentacula. That's highly illegal. And highly useful. Wednesday carefully examined each specimen. Sprout is developing hybrid plants with enhanced magical properties. The Ministry restricts this research because of its potential applications. Applications for what? War. Wednesday met Luna's eyes. These hybrids could form living fortifications, weaponized barriers. Defensive magic that actively attacks intruders. Luna considered this. Professor Sprout always seems so harmless. Wednesday closed the box. The most dangerous people often do. Their research was interrupted by a commotion in the corridor outside. Wednesday silently moved to the door, Luna close behind. I won't stand for it, Albus. Umbridge's voice carried clearly. That Adams girl is disrupting the entire school. Just today in my class, she submitted an essay on how the Ministry's approved defensive theory would be catastrophically inadequate against even basic necromantic attacks. My dear Professor, Dumbledore's calm voice replied, students must be allowed to express academic opinions, even controversial ones. Academic opinions. She included detailed diagrams of something called an infery improvement ritual. And this morning, I found this thing on my desk. Wednesday and Luna exchanged glances. Wednesday's lips quirked slightly, the closest she came to smiling. That morning, she had instructed Thing, a sentient, disembodied hand and loyal Adams family retainer, to deliver a small gift to Umbridge, a beautifully wrapped box containing a miniature replica of Umbridge herself, complete with pink cardigan and bow, being devoured by tiny animated thestrals. I cannot imagine how such an object found its way to your office, Dumbledore said, his voice betraying a hint of amusement. Perhaps a prank from the Weasley twins? It wasn't the Weasleys. It was her. That girl isn't normal, Albus. Her eyes, they see things they shouldn't. Professor Umbridge, I assure you that all students at Hogwarts receive equal treatment, regardless of their unique perspectives. Their voices faded as they moved down the corridor. Luna turned to Wednesday. You brought a living hand to Hogwarts, she asked, fascinated rather than horrified. Thing has been with my family for generations. He's extremely useful for reconnaissance. Wednesday placed the locked box inside her enchanted satchel. We should investigate the Room of Requirement tonight. The professor's secret meetings warrant closer observation. Luna nodded. We'll need a way to see inside without entering. I have something for that. Wednesday reached into her satchel, retrieving a small black mirror with a silver frame adorned with bat wings. My mother's watching glass. It can see through most magical barriers when activated with a drop of blood. You Adamses use blood magic for everything, don't you? Blood never lies, Luna. It carries power, memory, and truth. Wednesday's dark eyes gleamed. The wizarding world fears blood magic because it can't be controlled by the ministry or manipulated by politics. It's raw, primal magic, the kind Hogwarts was built on. Luna smiled dreamily. I think I'd like to meet your family someday. They'd adore you, Wednesday replied with complete seriousness. Especially Grandmama. She collects unusual minds. That night, hidden under a disillusionment charm, Wednesday and Luna positioned themselves near the room of requirement. Thing perched on Wednesday's shoulder, occasionally patting her braided hair affectionately. At precisely midnight, Professor McGonagall appeared, walking briskly toward the blank wall opposite Barnabas the Barmy's tapestry. She paced 3 times, and a door materialized. McGonagall glanced around before entering. Wednesday pricked her finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the watching glass. The mirror's surface rippled, then cleared to show the interior of the room. It had transformed into a comfortable meeting space with a circular table surrounded by chairs, each bearing the symbol of a different Hogwarts house. McGonagall took the Gryffindor seat. One by one, other professors arrived, Flitwick, Sprout, Snape, Vector, Sinistra, and finally, Dumbledore himself. Notably absent was Umbridge. The Order's intelligence suggests Voldemort is seeking the prophecy, Dumbledore began without preamble. Harry must be prepared, but Dolores is making direct intervention impossible. The Potter boy isn't ready, Snape said coldly. His occlumency is non-existent. We don't have the luxury of time, McGonagall countered. If you know who obtains the prophecy, he won't discover the full text, Dumbledore interrupted. Only Harry or Tom can retrieve it. Our primary concern must be preventing Harry from being lured to the Department of Mysteries. Wednesday and Luna exchanged glances. Department of Mysteries? Prophecy? Clearly, Potter was entangled in something far larger than school rivalries. There's another concern, Flitwick said. The Adams girl. She's displaying knowledge and abilities far beyond 5th year level. Just yesterday, she corrected my wand movement for the Protego Maxima charm, suggesting an ancient variation that, I must admit, proved more effective. Wednesday Adams comes from an old family with unorthodox traditions, Dumbledore said carefully. I've corresponded with her parents. They assured me she means no harm, though their definition of harm may differ from the conventional understanding. Snape sneered. She brews poisons in her spare time and carries a raven's skull that whispers prophecies of doom. If that's harmless, I'd hate to see their definition of dangerous. Severus, Sprout interjected, the girl has a remarkable affinity for magical plants. She's helping Longbottom with his Mimbulus Mimbletonia using techniques I've never seen. Blood feeding, Snape muttered. Ancient practice, borderline dark magic. Not dark, Dumbledore corrected. Just forgotten. The Ministry has systematically classified many older magical traditions as dark to maintain control over standardized magical education. Wednesday's eyebrows raised slightly, a dramatic expression by her standards. Dumbledore acknowledging the Ministry's manipulation of magical knowledge was unexpected. Nevertheless, McGonagall said, we should keep an eye on Miss Adams. She's been asking rather pointed questions about Hogwarts history, particularly about sealed chambers and hidden passages. Natural curiosity, Dumbledore dismissed. She's a Ravenclaw, after all. She's collecting secrets, Snape said sharply. I've seen her watching, cataloging movements, taking notes. She knows about Filch Squib's status, Hagrid's giant blood, and I suspect she's deduced my complicated allegiances. A tense silence followed this revelation. Keep her occupied, then, Dumbledore finally said. Challenge her intellectually. If her curiosity is directed toward academic pursuits, she'll have less time for investigation. The meeting continued, discussing Order business and strategies for undermining Umbridge's authority, but Wednesday had heard enough. She and Luna retreated silently, things scuttling ahead to ensure their path remained clear. Back in the Ravenclaw common room, they found a secluded corner to discuss their discoveries. They're afraid of you, Luna said, eyes wide with admiration. Not afraid. Uncertain. Wednesday pulled out a small leather-bound journal and began writing. They don't know how to categorize me. I don't fit their expectations of good or evil, light or dark. What are you writing? Documenting their secrets. Flitwick's goblin teaching. Sprout's illegal hybridization. Snape's complicated allegiances, clearly he's a double agent. McGonagall's fear of losing control. Wednesday's quill scratched steadily across the page. And Dumbledore's orchestration of it all. Luna leaned against the window, moonlight illuminating her silvery hair. What will you do with these secrets? Wednesday paused, looking up with her penetrating gaze. Truth is neither good nor evil, Luna. It simply is. Secrets fester like infected wounds. Sometimes, they must be lanced to heal. Even if the truth hurts people. Especially then. Wednesday closed her journal. Tomorrow, I need to speak with Neville about accessing the greenhouses after hours. Sprout's experimental plants require closer examination. Luna nodded. I'll help with the distraction. As they prepared to retire for the night, Wednesday noticed an odd shimmer near the common room entrance. Moving swiftly, she flicked her wand, casting a silent revealing spell. We have a visitor, she announced as the invisibility charm melted away, exposing a wide-eyed Hermione Granger. I was just, Hermione stammered, clutching a book to her chest. Spying, Wednesday finished calmly. Ravenclaw's entrance doesn't require a password but an answer to a riddle. You solved it. Impressive. Hermione straightened her shoulders. Harry saw you and Luna sneaking around with some kind of mirror. After everything that's happened, we needed to know what you're up to. And now you do. Wednesday approached Hermione slowly. You heard everything. Enough to know you're collecting secrets that aren't yours to take, Hermione said defiantly. Those are people's private lives you're investigating. Are they private when they affect the entire wizarding world? When they involve prophecies and hidden plans for Harry Potter? Wednesday stopped directly in front of Hermione. Your friend is being manipulated, Granger. Everyone is keeping secrets from him, Dumbledore most of all. Hermione's expression wavered between anger and uncertainty. Dumbledore has always protected Harry. Protection and manipulation often wear the same face. Wednesday tilted her head, studying Hermione. You value knowledge and truth. Yet you accept information being withheld because it comes from authority figures you trust. Luna joined them, her dreamy voice cutting through the tension. Hermione, haven't you ever wondered why Dumbledore keeps so many secrets? Why Harry only gets pieces of information, always just enough to act but never enough to choose? Hermione bit her lip. It's complicated, it's control, Wednesday said flatly. I'm not your enemy, Granger. Nor am I Potter's. I simply believe that hidden truths are more dangerous than exposed ones. A long silence followed as Hermione visibly struggled with conflicting loyalties. What are you planning to do? She finally asked. Continue my research. Document what I find. And when I have enough evidence, ensure that those who need the truth receive it. Hermione shook her head. You could damage the Order's work against Voldemort. There are bigger things happening, I'm well aware. The question is, are you aware of how deep the deception goes? Wednesday reached into her pocket and removed a small, ornate key. This opens a drawer in the restricted section, behind the false book titled, Most Mundane Magics. Inside is Dumbledore's original correspondence with Nicholas Flamel regarding the Philosopher's Stone. Read it, then decide if you still believe the headmaster has been forthcoming with Potter. Hermione stared at the key but didn't take it. How did you even find? Thing is very good at retrieving objects. Wednesday placed the key on a nearby table. Your choice, Granger. Knowledge or comfortable ignorance. The following day brought Umbridge's latest educational decree, all student organizations were disbanded unless approved by the High Inquisitor. The timing suggested Umbridge had somehow learned of Potter's secret defense group, though Wednesday hadn't included that particular secret in her catalog yet. During breakfast, an elegant black raven swooped into the great hall, causing heads to turn as it landed gracefully before Wednesday. The bird carried a small package wrapped in black paper tied with silver string. Mail delivery is typically handled by owls, Miss Adams, Professor Flitwick noted as he passed the Ravenclaw table. Hugin prefers direct delivery, Wednesday replied, feeding the raven a strip of rare beef from her plate. Ravens are more reliable for sensitive correspondence. She unwrapped the package to find a small, leather-bound book with the Addams family crest embossed on its cover, accompanied by a note in her mother's elegant handwriting. My dearest Wednesday, your father and I were delighted to receive your letter about Hogwarts' interesting secrets. The book enclosed should help with your investigations. It belonged to Great-Aunt Calpurnia, who attended Hogwarts in 1738 during a particularly bloody goblin rebellion. Her notes on the castle's hidden passages should prove useful. Pugsley misses you terribly. He's been experimenting with your chemistry set and managed to create an acid that dissolved his bedroom floor. Grandmama was most impressed. Thing insisted on returning with Hugin. He was quite adamant about continuing to assist you. You'll find him in the package's false bottom. With love and darkness, Mother P.S. Your father suggests checking behind the portrait of Wendelin the Weird on the 4th floor. Apparently, she was a distant relation and left something entertaining for future Adamses who might attend Hogwarts. As if on cue, the package's bottom compartment popped open, and things sprang out, waving cheerfully to Wednesday before scuttling beneath the table to avoid detection. Luna peered at the book with interest. Is that a school diary? More of a death diary, Wednesday replied, flipping through pages filled with detailed accounts of suspicious incidents, hidden rooms, and forgotten passages. Great-Aunt Calpurnia had a particular interest in Hogwarts' mortality rate. Before Luna could respond, commotion erupted at the entrance to the Great Hall. Umbridge stood there, her pink cardigan quivering with rage as she pointed her wand at a swarm of enchanted paper bats that circled her head, occasionally diving to deliver paper cuts. Who is responsible for this? She shrieked, swatting ineffectively at the bats. From the Gryffindor table, Fred and George Weasley watched with matching expressions of innocence that fooled no one. Wednesday observed the chaos with detached interest until she noticed Thing had disappeared from beneath their table. Her suspicion was confirmed moments later when Umbridge let out another shriek as something unseen yanked at her hair bow. The invisible culprit then proceeded to untie her shoelaces, causing her to stumble forward into the Great Hall. Problem, Professor? Wednesday asked as Umbridge lurched past the Ravenclaw table, still battling paper bats while trying to identify her invisible tormentor. Umbridge's bulging eyes fixed on Wednesday with pure loathing. You! This is your doing. I've been sitting here the entire time, Wednesday replied calmly, holding up her spoonful of porridge. As witnessed by my housemates. Several Ravenclaws nodded automatically, though most looked uncertain whether they were more afraid of Umbridge or Wednesday. I know it's you, Umbridge hissed. You and your freakish ways. I've written to the minister himself about your dangerous influence on this school. How fascinating, Wednesday said, unperturbed. I've been corresponding with my Uncle Fester about you as well. He's particularly interested in your use of blood quills on minors. He collects instruments of torture, you see. Very enthusiastic about historical methods of pain infliction. Umbridge paled slightly. Are you threatening a ministry official, Miss Adams? Merely engaging in educational correspondence about comparative disciplinary techniques. Wednesday's dark eyes held Umbridge's. Uncle Fester was particularly interested in your innovative application of a controlled artifact. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement might share his academic curiosity. Before Umbridge could respond, Professor McGonagall arrived to disperse the paper bats with a complex wand movement. Professor Umbridge, perhaps we should continue this in private? Umbridge glared at Wednesday one last time before allowing McGonagall to lead her away, her shoelaces mysteriously retied in elaborate bows that caused her to waddle even more awkwardly than usual. Luna giggled softly. Your hand friend is quite mischievous. Thing has strong opinions about abusive authority figures, Wednesday agreed as the sentient hand crawled back up her sleeve. A family trait. Defense against the dark arts that afternoon proved eventful. Umbridge, still seething from the morning's humiliation, announced a practical examination of defensive knowledge, clearly intended to embarrass those students, particularly Potter's friends, whom she suspected of participating in unauthorized defense training. Miss Adams, Umbridge called with vicious sweetness, since you've expressed such confidence in alternative defensive theories, perhaps you'd demonstrate a shield charm against a ministry-approved stunning spell. Wednesday rose from her seat, her expression unchanged. Certainly, Professor. The class watched nervously as Umbridge and Wednesday faced off in the cleared center of the room. Umbridge's face held poorly concealed malice as she raised her wand. Prepare yourself. 1, 2, stupefy. She cast on 2 rather than 3, clearly hoping to catch Wednesday off guard. Instead of using a conventional protego, Wednesday made a fluid motion with her wand while murmuring words in a language that sounded ancient and somehow wrong to the listening students. The red stunning spell struck an invisible barrier about a foot from Wednesday and rebounded, not back toward Umbridge, but upward, where it split into 7 smaller red bolts that hovered momentarily before shooting back down in a circular pattern around Wednesday. Umbridge barely managed to dodge one of the rebounding spells, which left a scorch mark on the floor where she had stood. What was that? She demanded, face flushed. That is not the standard shield charm. It's the Adams reflection barrier, Wednesday explained calmly. Developed by my great-great-grandfather during the vampire uprisings of 1870. It doesn't simply block a spell but fragments and redirects it. That's not ministry-approved defensive magic. It's not dark arts either, Wednesday countered. Unless the ministry classifies efficient self-defense as dark now. Murmurs spread through the classroom. Hermione Granger was frantically taking notes, while Harry Potter watched Wednesday with a new, evaluating expression. Umbridge, realizing she'd miscalculated, attempted to regain control. Return to your seat, Miss Adams. 5 points from Ravenclaw for using non-standard spell work without permission. Technically, you gave permission when you requested a demonstration of my defensive capabilities, Wednesday pointed out. You didn't specify which shield charm to use. A few students snickered, quickly silenced by Umbridge's glare. Another detention, I think. Tonight. I look forward to it, Wednesday replied, returning to her seat with the same measured pace. I've been experimenting with a potion that accelerates healing of wounds while preserving scars. The blood quill provides an excellent testing opportunity. Umbridge's face contorted with rage and something else, fear. Class dismissed. Everyone out. Except you, Miss Adams. As students filed out, many casting curious glances back at Wednesday, Luna paused at the door. Wednesday gave her a slight nod, and Luna departed, understanding the silent communication. When they were alone, Umbridge approached Wednesday's desk, trembling with barely suppressed emotion. I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now, she whispered furiously. I've dealt with dark witches before. The ministry has places for people like you. Wednesday regarded her with those bottomless black eyes. People like me? You mean people who know things you'd prefer remained hidden? Like your correspondence with Cornelius Fudge about using memory charms on students who witnessed your use of blood quills. Umbridge froze. How could you possibly, or perhaps you mean people who notice how your left hand trembles slightly when dementors are mentioned. An interesting reaction for someone who authorized their use around a school full of children. You're spying on me, Umbridge hissed. I observe, Wednesday corrected. There's a difference. Spying implies I care about your activities specifically. I'm merely cataloging the hypocrisies and secrets of Hogwarts. You happen to be a particularly abundant source. Umbridge leaned closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Listen carefully, you strange little girl. I am Dolores Umbridge, Senior Undersecretary to the Minister of Magic. I have the authority to have you expelled, your wand snapped, even your family investigated for dark magic use. Wednesday didn't blink. And I am Wednesday Addams. My family has been practicing magic since before the ministry existed. We've survived witch hunts, inquisitions, and 2 Voldemort uprisings. She stood slowly. Threaten me again, and you'll discover why the Addams name is whispered even among dark wizards. Before Umbridge could respond, the classroom door burst open. Neville Longbottom stood there, panting slightly. Wednesday. You have to come quickly. It's your pet hand thing. Malfoy and his friends cornered it near the dungeons. Wednesday was moving before Neville finished speaking, her wand appearing in her hand with silent speed. Where? Potions corridor, Neville said, hurrying alongside her. Luna's trying to distract them, but Crabbe had a cage. Wednesday's pace increased, a cold fury emanating from her that caused students to flatten themselves against walls as she passed. Umbridge called after them, her voice shrill with command, but neither Wednesday nor Neville slowed. They found the scene exactly as Neville described. Draco Malfoy and his cronies had cornered Thing near the entrance to the potions classroom. The disembodied hand was dodging hexes, occasionally leaping up to slap at the Slytherins' faces. Luna stood nearby, her wand drawn but clearly outnumbered. It's unnatural. Malfoy was saying. Wait until my father hears the kind of creatures they're allowing in Hogwarts now. Thing is family, Wednesday said, her quiet voice somehow carrying over the commotion. Not a creature. The Slytherins turned, several taking involuntary steps back at the sight of Wednesday's expression. Even Malfoy, normally dismissive of anyone outside his circle of influence, seemed momentarily unnerved. That thing attacked me, he recovered quickly. Crawled up my robes during potions and stole my family signet ring. Thing, seeing Wednesday, scuttled quickly to her side, climbing up to perch on her shoulder. It made a series of gestures that only Wednesday seemed to understand. Thing says your ring was already missing. He was searching the dungeon floor for lost items, as I instructed him to do. It's lying. Malfoy sneered. It can't even talk. Thing doesn't lie, Wednesday replied, her voice dropping several degrees in temperature. Though I understand why someone accustomed to falsehoods would project that tendency onto others. Crabbe stepped forward menacingly. You calling Draco a liar? Wednesday's wand moved in a subtle pattern, and Crabbe suddenly found himself unable to advance, his shoelaces had knotted themselves together with his belt. I'm stating a fact. Draco's ring was confiscated by Professor Snape yesterday after Malfoy was caught using it to seal letters with unauthorized magic. She tilted her head. Curious that he'd claim it was stolen today. Malfoy's pale face flushed pink. How would you know that? I pay attention. Wednesday's dark eyes scanned the group. Just as I've noticed that Gregory Goyle has been stealing potion ingredients for a banned wit-sharpening concoction, Pansy Parkinson has been intercepting Millicent Bulstrode's mail, and you, Draco, have been avoiding the 7th floor corridor since witnessing something there that frightened you considerably. The Slytherins exchanged uneasy glances. Wednesday hadn't raised her voice, yet each accusation landed with precision. You don't know anything, Malfoy blustered, though his confidence was clearly shaken. I know your father's position with the Dark Lord is precarious at best, Wednesday continued relentlessly. I know your mother writes to you daily, her letters increasingly concerned about your safety rather than your achievements. I know you wake screaming 3 nights out of 7. Malfoy's face had gone from pink to ashen. You're making that up. The Addams family has connections throughout the wizarding world, Draco. Even in places your father would rather not acknowledge. Wednesday stepped closer. Harass Thing again, and the next facts I share won't be in a relatively private corridor. For a moment, it seemed Malfoy might escalate the confrontation. Then Professor Snape rounded the corner, taking in the scene with one sweeping glance. "What is the meaning of this gathering?" he demanded. "Just a minor misunderstanding about lost property, Professor," Wednesday answered before anyone else could speak. "We were just leaving." Snape's eyes narrowed as he noticed Thing perched on Wednesday's shoulder. "Miss Adams, I believe Professor Umbridge has been searching for you. Something about a detention you're now late for. Thank you for the reminder." Wednesday nodded politely to Snape, then turned to leave, Luna and Neville falling in beside her. "Miss Adams," Snape called after her. "That appendage on your shoulder. Is it registered with the Ministry as a magical familiar?" Wednesday paused. "Thing is family, not a familiar. He doesn't require registration any more than my cousin Itt requires a license for his hair." Before Snape could respond to this peculiar statement, Wednesday and her friends had disappeared around the corner. The potions master turned his attention to the Slytherins, who were attempting to look innocent despite Crabbe's entangled shoelaces. "Mr. Malfoy," Snape said silkily, "perhaps you could explain why you're harassing a transfer student instead of completing the extra credit assignment I set for you yesterday." Malfoy swallowed hard. "We were just, save your excuses. My office, all of you. Now." Wednesday deliberately skipped her detention with Umbridge that evening, instead joining Luna, Neville, and, surprisingly, Hermione Granger in the library. They secluded themselves in a corner table behind the ancient runes section, where Wednesday spread out several parchments covered in her neat, spidery handwriting. "I found references to a hidden chamber beneath the astronomy tower," she explained, pointing to her notes. "Not Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, but something older. Possibly dating to Hogwarts' original construction. Why would Hermione help us?" Luna asked dreamily, though her eyes were sharp as she glanced between Wednesday and the Gryffindor prefect. Hermione looked uncomfortable. "I used the key you gave me. The correspondence between Dumbledore and Flamel." She hesitated. "It wasn't what I expected." "The Philosopher's Stone was never in danger," Wednesday stated. "It was a test for Potter. Flamel had already destroyed the real stone years earlier." "Which means everything Harry went through," Hermione began. "Was orchestrated," Wednesday finished. "A series of challenges specifically designed to test Potter's abilities and temperament." Neville looked bewildered. "Why would Dumbledore do that to a first-year student?" "To determine if he was the weapon they needed him to be," Wednesday replied. "The prophecy child, being shaped for his confrontation with Voldemort." "But Harry was just 11. Hermione protested, though her voice lacked conviction. "Age matters little in prophecy." Wednesday tapped another parchment. "What matters is that Dumbledore has been manipulating events around Potter since his parents' deaths. The question is, to what end?" Luna leaned forward. "You think there's more to the prophecy than even Harry knows." "I know there is." Wednesday met each of their gazes in turn. "Professor Trelawney made a true prediction in my presence. It referenced the old man's greatest lie and suggested Potter faces multiple possible fates, not the single destiny Dumbledore has implied." Hermione bit her lip. "This is dangerous territory, Wednesday. If you know who is after the prophecy, then understanding its full implications becomes even more critical." Wednesday gestured toward the stack of books she'd collected. "These texts on prophecy interpretation suggest that divination predictions often have multiple valid interpretations. What if Dumbledore has been forcing events toward a single interpretation that serves his own agenda?" Neville, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke. "My parents were tortured into insanity because of a prophecy that could have been about either me or Harry." His voice was steady despite the painful subject. "I think I deserve to know if there's more to it than what we've been told." The group fell silent, absorbing the weight of Neville's words. Finally, Hermione sighed. "What do you need from us?" Wednesday allowed herself the barest smile. "Access to the hidden chamber beneath the astronomy tower. According to my great-aunt's diary, it contains a pensieve specifically designed to view and interpret prophecies. one that predates Dumbledore's time as headmaster. How do we get in? Neville asked. That's where it gets complicated. Wednesday pulled out another parchment. The chamber responds only to specific magical signatures. Old bloodlines with connections to the founders. Like the Longbottoms, Luna said softly. Neville paled. Me? But I'm barely passing my classes. I'm not. Magical talent and magical lineage are different matters, Wednesday interrupted. Your blood carries the signature of Hufflepuff's line. Combined with my family's connection to Ravenclaw, your family is related to Ravenclaw. Hermione interrupted skeptically. Through my father's second cousin twice removed, who married Ravenclaw's great-great-granddaughter. Wednesday's expression remained neutral. The Addams genealogy is extensively documented, particularly regarding connections to historically significant necromancers. Luna smiled. That explains your affinity for riddles. So we need Neville's blood and yours, Hermione summarized, looking uncomfortable. Isn't that dark magic? Blood identity verification isn't dark magic, wizarding banks use it routinely. Wednesday closed her journal. But we'll need more than blood. The chamber has remained hidden because it requires representatives from at least 3 houses to access it. All eyes turned to Hermione. Gryffindor, she realized. You need me to represent Gryffindor. Precisely. Wednesday nodded. Luna will provide the intellectual insight to interpret what we find. Between the 4 of us, we have the necessary components. What about Slytherin? Neville asked. You said 3 houses, but there are 4. Slytherin's signature is already present in the chamber itself, Wednesday explained. Salazar was the one who created the prophecy vault, according to my research. Hermione looked torn between scholarly fascination and caution. This is serious magic, Wednesday. Breaking into a hidden chamber that even Dumbledore might not know about. Oh, he knows about it, Wednesday contradicted. But he can't access it alone. The chamber was designed to require cooperation between houses, a safeguard against any one person controlling prophetic knowledge. Luna's dreamy voice cut through the tension. When do we go? Tonight, Wednesday replied. Midnight at the base of the astronomy tower. Thing will keep watch for patrolling teachers. As they prepared to leave the library, a soft cough made them turn. Theodore Nott stood nearby, his Slytherin tie loosened and his expression unreadable. Adams, he said quietly. A word? Wednesday studied him for a moment, then nodded to her companions. I'll join you shortly. When they were alone among the bookshelves, Theodore spoke in a low voice. I heard what Malfoy tried to do with your hand. Not all Slytherins agree with his methods. I'm aware of the factional divisions within your house, Wednesday replied. Your father is a Death Eater, yet you've been researching counter-curses for the Imperius rather than offensive magic. Theodore's eyes widened slightly. How did you? Your reading list is quite distinctive. As is your habit of practicing wand movements under the table during History of Magic. For a moment, Theodore looked alarmed, then his expression shifted to one of wry amusement. You're more observant than most. So you know my father expects me to join the Dark Lord when I'm of age. And you're looking for alternatives, Wednesday concluded. Interesting. I want to make you an offer, Theodore said, leaning closer. Information in exchange for assistance. What information? I know what Malfoy saw on the 7th floor that scared him. And I know why Umbridge is really here at Hogwarts, beyond Fudge's paranoia about Dumbledore. Wednesday considered him. And what assistance do you require? A way out, Theodore said simply. When the time comes, and it's coming soon, I need a way to disappear that my father can't trace. The Addams family has extensive experience with disappearances, Wednesday acknowledged. Both causing them and facilitating them. Do we have a deal? Theodore extended his hand. Wednesday didn't take it immediately. Information first. Then we'll discuss terms. Theodore nodded, accepting her caution. Malfoy saw something in the room of hidden things. A vanishing cabinet, part of a matched pair. The other half is at Borgin and Burke's. Wednesday's eyes narrowed slightly. A direct passage into Hogwarts, bypassing all protective enchantments. Exactly. And as for Umbridge, she's not just here to spy for Fudge. She's searching for something Dumbledore has hidden in the castle. Something called a Founder's Artifact. Which Founder? She didn't specify. But whatever it is, the Ministry believes it could provide a weapon against you-know-who that doesn't rely on Potter. Wednesday absorbed this information, her mind rapidly connecting it with her other discoveries. Interesting. Meet me tomorrow night, same location. I'll have something for you. Theodore nodded once, then slipped away between the bookshelves. Wednesday remained still, cataloging this new information alongside her other secrets. The picture forming was more complex, and more dangerous, than she had initially anticipated. Thing, who had been hiding among the books, scuttled down to tap her shoulder questioningly. Yes, Wednesday told the sentient hand. We'll need to adjust our plans. The chamber is even more important now. As she gathered her materials to leave, Wednesday felt the weight of the school's accumulated secrets pressing around her like a physical presence. Secrets upon secrets, lies wrapped in half-truths, manipulations masked as protection. Something was going to break soon. And when it did, Wednesday intended to be holding the hammer. The clock struck midnight as four figures converged at the base of the astronomy tower. Wednesday led them not up the spiral staircase, but to a seemingly solid stone wall adorned with a faded astronomical chart. The entrance is concealed by more than just magic, she explained, tracing the constellation Draco with her finger. It's hidden by perception. You have to know exactly what you're looking for. She produced a small silver knife with an obsidian handle. Blood freely given reveals what is hidden. One by one, they each pricked their fingers, Neville wincing but determined, Luna dreamily fascinated, Hermione hesitant but resolute. Wednesday went last, her expression unchanged as the blade pierced her skin. They pressed their bleeding fingers to specific stars on the chart, Neville to Helga's star, a point in Ursa Minor, Hermione to Godric's flame, the heart of Leo, Luna to a point Wednesday identified as Rowena's diadem, in Corvus, and Wednesday herself to the junction of several constellations. The stone seemed to shiver, then dissolve, revealing a narrow passage that spiraled downward rather than up. Lumos, Wednesday murmured, her wand-light casting long shadows as she led the way. The passage descended deep beneath the astronomy tower, the air growing cold and heavy with ancient magic. This feels old, Luna whispered, trailing her fingers along the rough stone walls. Older than the rest of Hogwarts. The foundation stones, Wednesday confirmed. Laid before the founders formalized their alliance, when their vision of a magical school was still taking shape. After several minutes of descent, the passage opened into a circular chamber. Unlike the rest of Hogwarts' Gothic architecture, this room was reminiscent of ancient stone circles, rough-hewn blocks arranged in perfect astronomical alignment. In the center stood a stone basin similar to a pensieve, but crafted from black obsidian rather than silver. The prophecy pool, Wednesday said, approaching it reverently. Created by Salazar Slytherin but enhanced by all four founders. It doesn't just store memories, it reveals the multiple paths prophecies can take. Hermione examined the strange runes carved around the basin's edge. These aren't like any runes I've studied. Pre-Roman, Wednesday explained. Possibly Pictish in origin. They represent concepts rather than sounds, fate, choice, convergence, divergence. Neville peered into the empty basin. How do we use it? We don't have any prophecies to view. We have one. Wednesday removed a small vial from her pocket, containing a swirling silver substance. Extracted from my own memory. Trelawney's prediction about the daughter of darkness and the old man's greatest lie. Luna's eyes widened. You know how to extract memories. My great-grandmother taught me. She believed memories were too precious to trust to fallible organic recall. Wednesday uncorked the vial and poured the silvery contents into the black basin. Instead of pooling as in a normal pen sieve, the memories seemed to fracture, spreading out in a complex pattern like frost on glass. Now we place our hands on the cardinal points of the basin, Wednesday instructed. Each representing one house. Together, we'll see not just the prophecy, but its possible interpretations. They positioned themselves around the basin, Hermione at north, Gryffindor, Neville at south, Hufflepuff, Luna at east, Ravenclaw, and Wednesday at west, representing the absent Slytherin presence. Clear your minds, Wednesday said softly. Let the prophecy speak through multiple voices. As their hands touched the cold stone, the chamber darkened. The memory in the basin began to glow, illuminating their faces from below with eerie light. Then, instead of drawing them in as a normal pensive would, the prophecy rose up around them in multiple overlapping images of Trelawney, each slightly different, speaking the same words with different emphases, different meanings. The daughter of darkness walks these halls, the many Trelawneys intoned. She will uncover what has been hidden, expose what has been buried. Some versions emphasized daughter of darkness, others, what has been hidden. In some, Trelawney's face was fearful, in others, triumphant. The one with the lightning scar faces not one fate but many when death's child reveals the old man's greatest lie. The chamber echoed with overlapping voices, the prophecy repeating and fragmenting, showing its multiple possible interpretations simultaneously. Then, unexpectedly, the visions shifted. Another prophecy emerged from the depths of the basin, one none of them had placed there. An earlier Trelawney appeared, younger but with the same eerie, possessed quality, the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Hermione gasped. That's the prophecy about Harry. How is it here? The chamber is connected to all prophecies made concerning Hogwarts, Wednesday realized. It's showing us the connection between them. They watched in stunned silence as the original prophecy about Harry played out, but unlike the single version Dumbledore had presumably shared, the prophecy pool showed multiple interpretations. In some, the Dark Lord clearly meant Voldemort. In others, the reference seemed more ambiguous. Most disturbing was the line either must die at the hand of the other, which the pool revealed could be interpreted in horrifying ways beyond the obvious. In one version, it suggested Harry and Voldemort were bound in a cycle that could only end when one killed the other. In another, it hinted that the act of killing would fundamentally transform the survivor into something neither had intended to become. Dumbledore only shared one interpretation, Wednesday observed as the visions faded. The one that served his purpose. Which is? Neville asked, his face pale in the dim light. To shape Potter into a weapon willing to sacrifice himself, Wednesday replied. The old man's greatest lie isn't just about the prophecy, it's that Potter has a choice at all. But my prophecy suggests he does have choices, Luna said softly. It says Harry faces not one fate but many, when your truth-seeking exposes Dumbledore's lie. The basin's light dimmed as the prophecies receded. The four students stood in silence, processing what they'd witnessed. We can't tell Harry everything at once, Hermione finally said. It would overwhelm him, especially with what he's already dealing with. Knowledge without context is as dangerous as ignorance, Wednesday agreed. But he deserves to know he has more agency than Dumbledore has allowed him to believe. As they prepared to leave the chamber, a soft sound from the passage made them freeze. Things scuttled down Wednesday's arm, gesturing frantically. Someone's coming, she translated. Conceal yourselves. They barely had time to cast disillusionment charms before the passage filled with light and Professor McGonagall entered the chamber, followed by Dumbledore himself. I felt the chamber activate, Albus, McGonagall was saying. After all these years, indeed, Minerva, Dumbledore replied, his voice grave. The wards alerted me as well. Someone has accessed the Founder's prophecy pool. They approached the basin, examining it closely. Dumbledore passed his wand over the surface, murmuring detection spells. 2 prophecies were viewed, he announced. Sybil's prediction about Harry, and a newer one I'm not familiar with. Could it be Miss Adams? McGonagall asked. She's been asking questions about the school's secrets, appearing in places she shouldn't be able to access. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. The chamber requires representatives from at least 3 houses to open it. Miss Adams, clever as she is, would need accomplices. Potter's friends, perhaps. Possibly. Though I suspect Miss Lovegood might be involved. She and Miss Adams have formed quite the partnership. McGonagall pursed her lips. Should we confront them? If they've seen the alternative interpretations of the prophecy, no, Dumbledore decided. Confrontation would only confirm the suspicions Miss Adams already harbors. Better to accelerate our timeline. Accelerate? But the boy isn't ready. He may never be ready in the conventional sense, Minerva. But events are moving faster than anticipated. If Miss Adams is indeed unraveling our carefully laid plans, we must adapt. Wednesday, concealed against the wall, exchanged glances with her similarly invisible companions. Dumbledore was confirming their suspicions in real time. And the Adams girl? McGonagall asked. Dumbledore sighed heavily. A fascinating anomaly. I had hoped her unique perspective might actually prove useful in the coming conflict. The Adams family has traditionally remained neutral in wizarding wars, but their expertise in certain branches of magic could be invaluable. She's disrupting everything, Albus. Questioning authority, encouraging students to investigate forbidden topics, all qualities I would normally encourage, Dumbledore said with a faint smile. Just not at this particular moment in history. He turned toward the passage. Come. We'll adjust the wards on this chamber and monitor it more closely. If our young investigators return, we'll know immediately. After the professors departed, the 4 students maintained their concealment for several long minutes before Wednesday finally signaled it was safe to drop their charms. They knew, Hermione whispered, looking shaken. They knew about this place all along. Of course they did, Wednesday replied. Dumbledore knows everything that happens in this castle. He simply chooses what to address and what to allow. He's going to accelerate the timeline, Neville repeated. What does that mean for Harry? Nothing good, Wednesday said. We need to move faster than they anticipate. Luna studied the now dormant prophecy pool. What's our next step? Wednesday's dark eyes gleamed with determination. We expose the old man's greatest lie before he can implement whatever he's planning. And we start with the most visible secret in plain sight. Which is? Hermione asked. Umbridge's real mission at Hogwarts, Wednesday replied. Finding the Founder's artifact. Whatever it is, both Dumbledore and the Ministry believe it's powerful enough to change the course of the coming war. They made their way carefully back up the passage, Wednesday pausing only to reseal the entrance with a complex motion of her wand. The stone wall reappeared, the astronomical chart once again hiding the secret passage. Tomorrow, Wednesday told them as they prepared to return to their respective dormitories, we begin the systematic exposure of every professor's secrets. Starting with the most dangerous one of all. Dumbledore? Neville guessed. No, Wednesday replied. We save him for last. We start with Umbridge, the immediate threat. As they separated in the darkened corridors of Hogwarts, things scuttled along beside Wednesday, occasionally patting her hand reassuringly. The sentient appendage seemed to sense her growing resolve. Yes, thing, she murmured. It's time to execute Mother's contingency plan. Send the raven at dawn. The hand gave a salute of understanding. Whatever the Adams family had prepared for this moment, it was about to be set in motion, and Hogwarts would never be the same. Chapter 2, Secrets Bleed Through the Walls. Dawn broke over Hogwarts as Wednesday added 3 drops of her own blood to the simmering cauldron hidden behind a false wall in the abandoned girls' bathroom on the 3rd floor. The potion turned from clear to silver, then settled into a pearlescent sheen that reflected Wednesday's pale face in fragments. Is that it? Theodore not asked from his position by the door, where he kept watch. Doesn't look like Veritaserum. Standard Veritaserum forces conscious disclosure, Wednesday replied, carefully filling several tiny crystal vials. This variant targets subconscious revelations. The subject reveals secrets through unintentional slips, not direct statements. Theodore's eyebrows rose. That's brilliant, actually. They can't resist what they don't realize is happening. The Addams family has refined truth serums for generations. Great-Aunt Dementia once extracted a full confession from the Bulgarian Minister of Magic while he thought he was discussing orchid cultivation. Wednesday capped the last vial and slipped it into a leather pouch at her waist. Your information about the vanishing cabinet proved accurate. I've verified its existence in the Room of Hidden Things. And my payment? Theodore asked, trying to sound casual despite the tension in his shoulders. Wednesday handed him a small obsidian box carved with symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Inside is a vial of essence of displacement. 1 drop makes you unplottable for 24 hours. The full vial will render you completely untraceable for a month, long enough to establish a new identity. Theodore took the box reverently. This is... I didn't expect something this powerful. The Addams family rewards useful allies. Wednesday gathered her equipment. Now tell me about this founder's artifact Umbridge seeks. Theodore glanced at the door before lowering his voice. I've only heard fragments. My father mentioned it in correspondence with other Death Eaters. They believe it's a weapon of some kind, something Slytherin created that even Voldemort doesn't know about. Interesting, Wednesday murmured. Both sides searching for the same artifact, yet neither acknowledging it publicly. There's more, Theodore continued. Umbridge has been communicating directly with Lucius Malfoy, bypassing even Fudge. Whatever this artifact is, certain Death Eaters want it independent of Voldemort's knowledge. Wednesday absorbed this information with her usual impassive expression. Factions within factions. The adults play their games while preparing children as sacrificial pieces. Speaking of which, Theodore said hesitantly, what exactly are you planning to do with this modified Veritaserum? Administer it to the faculty, one by one, and document the secrets they inadvertently reveal, Wednesday replied matter-of-factly. Beginning with breakfast this morning. You're going to drug the professors? In the Great Hall. Thing has excellent dexterity for adding drops to beverages unnoticed. Theodore shook his head in disbelief. You know, when I approached you for help, I didn't realize I was aligning myself with someone possibly more dangerous than the Dark Lord. The difference, Wednesday said as she extinguished the magical flame beneath her cauldron, is that I'm honest about my methods. She turned to face him directly. Voldemort claims to seek power for purebloods but sacrifices them without hesitation. Dumbledore preaches love while manipulating everyone like chess pieces. I simply believe truth has value in itself, regardless of consequences. And what if the consequences include expulsion? Or worse? The truth is worth any price, Wednesday replied. My family taught me that before I could walk. As they prepared to leave their makeshift laboratory, Theodore asked the question that had been bothering him since their alliance began. Why are you really doing this, Addams? What do you gain from exposing everyone's secrets? Wednesday paused at the door, her face half illuminated by wand light. When I was 7, I found my great-grandmother's journal describing her time at Hogwarts. She wrote about a school where magical knowledge flowed freely, where students learned both light and dark arts to understand their proper applications. Her voice remained flat, but something burned in her dark eyes. That Hogwarts disappeared when wizards became afraid of their own power, when control became more important than understanding. My family has always believed that magic, in all its forms, deserves respect rather than fear, honesty rather than concealment. Theodore studied her. So this is, what, a philosophical crusade? This is an autopsy, Wednesday replied. I'm dissecting a diseased institution to understand the rot at its core. Only then can proper healing begin. At breakfast, Thing moved with invisible speed beneath the head table, adding drops of the modified Veritaserum to specific goblets while Wednesday maintained a perfect alibi by asking Professor Flitwick about advanced charm theory. None of the faculty noticed the momentary shimmer in their drinks as the potion dissolved. Luna sat beside Wednesday, absently buttering toast while reading an upside-down copy of the Quibbler. Father says the ministry is breeding an army of heliopaths, she commented. Fire spirits that burn everything in their path. Metaphorically accurate, Wednesday replied. Umbridge's policies are designed to burn away independent thinking. From the head table came the first results of Wednesday's potion. Professor McGonagall, mid-conversation with Professor Sprout, suddenly remarked, "The centaur herd has grown more restless since Firenze accepted Dumbledore's offer. Ronan particularly, well, our conversations have become rather strained." Sprout looked momentarily confused by this non sequitur. Conversations? I wasn't aware you regularly spoke with the centaurs, Minerva. McGonagall blinked, seemingly surprised by her own statement. Professional consultations only, of course. For divination purposes. Wednesday made a small note in her journal, observing how McGonagall's hand unconsciously touched a braided leather bracelet partially hidden beneath her sleeve, a centaur craft, if Wednesday's anthropological knowledge was correct. It's working, she murmured to Luna. The potion causes them to interject personally significant secrets into unrelated conversations. Next came Professor Snape, who snapped at Hagrid, "If you insist on bringing those blast-ended scripts near the greenhouse again, I'll have no choice but to." He stopped suddenly, his expression flickering. Though I suppose intentions matter more than appearances, even with dangerous creatures. Hagrid looked thoroughly confused. Never figured for defending my creatures, Professor. Snape's face settled back into its usual disdainful mask. I merely acknowledge that dangerous exteriors sometimes conceal different natures. A concept apparently too subtle for most to grasp. Hermione, who had positioned herself nearby at Wednesday's suggestion, caught the exchange and shot a meaningful glance toward the Ravenclaw table. Wednesday nodded slightly, another revelation documented. Most telling was Professor Umbridge, who had just taken a sip from her goblet when Professor Vector asked her opinion on the fifth year's OWL preparation. The standards must be maintained, Umbridge began in her sickly sweet voice, although I sometimes wonder if. She paused, her face twitching oddly. If Cornelius truly understands the importance of what we seek beneath the school. The artifact could change everything if the centaur's predictions about Potter prove correct. Vector stared at her. I beg your pardon. Umbridge seemed to mentally shake herself. The educational standards, Professor Vector. We were discussing OWL preparation. But the damage was done. Wednesday's quill moved across her journal, recording every word. Centaur predictions about Potter. An artifact beneath the school. Cornelius Fudge directly involved. The pieces were assembling themselves into a disturbing picture. After classes that day, Wednesday led Luna, Neville, and Hermione to the 7th floor, opposite the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. The room of hidden things, she explained. I need to show you something. She paced 3 times before the blank wall, concentrating on her specific need. A door materialized, smaller and more ancient-looking than the entrance Harry used for Dumbledore's army meetings. Inside, instead of the cathedral-like space of lost objects, they found a compact room with stone walls covered in shelves. Each shelf held personal items labeled with professors' names, some mundane, others decidedly not. What is this place? Hermione asked, staring at the collection. A variation of the room of requirement I discovered through Great-Aunt Calpurnia's notes, Wednesday explained. The room manifests what you need, in this case, physical evidence of the secrets we're uncovering. That can't be right, Hermione objected. The room can't create things that don't exist. It can only provide what's already in Hogwarts. Precisely. Wednesday gestured to the shelves. These are actual items belonging to the professors, hidden throughout the castle. The room has created a way for us to view them all in one place. Luna drifted to a shelf labeled Minerva McGonagall, and picked up what appeared to be a journal bound in centaur-crafted leather. Should we be looking at their private possessions? We're not taking anything, Wednesday clarified. Just verifying the secrets we've uncovered. Neville hesitantly approached a shelf marked Pomona Sprout that contained seedlings labeled in coded script. These are the hybrids you mentioned. Venomous tentacula crossed with, is that Mandrake? Wednesday joined him. A brilliant combination. Sprout is creating plants with both offensive and defensive capabilities, magical species designed for warfare. But Professor Sprout is so gentle, Neville protested. The most peaceful people often create the most effective weapons, Wednesday replied. They understand precisely what violence costs. Hermione had moved to Snape's section, which contained surprisingly few items, a sign of his naturally secretive nature. But one object stood out, a small silver frame containing a dried lily flower. Is this? She began. Confirmation of his true allegiance, Wednesday confirmed. And his motivation for it. The group methodically examined the evidence for each professor's secrets, Flitwick's goblin ancestry records and wand crafting experiments, Trelawney's collection of genuine prophecies transcribed in coded language, even Dumbledore's annotated copy of The Tales of Beedle the Bard, with disturbing notes about the Deathly Hallows in the margins. Most revealing was Umbridge's shelf, which contained ministry documents that should never have left the Department of Mysteries. Wednesday carefully examined parchments describing the Founder's Vault and Slytherin's final legacy. According to these, she told the others, the Ministry believes Salazar Slytherin created a hidden repository of knowledge beneath Hogwarts, separate from the Chamber of Secrets. Something containing magic so powerful it could reshape the fundamental balance between wizard and muggle. Another weapon? Hermione asked, looking troubled. Or knowledge deemed too dangerous to share, Wednesday suggested. The kind of magic the Ministry has systematically suppressed for centuries. Where is this vault supposed to be? Neville asked. Wednesday traced the incomplete map attached to the document. These markings suggest somewhere beneath the Black Lake, accessible only through a passage that begins, here. She tapped a specific location. The Slytherin dormitories. That's why Umbridge has been particularly focused on controlling Slytherin House, Luna realized. She needs access to their common room. And why she's cultivating Malfoy and his friends, Hermione added. The Inquisitorial Squad isn't just about opposing Harry, it's about gaining legitimate access to all areas of the castle. Wednesday closed the folder and returned it to the shelf. Tonight, we need to investigate the Slytherin dormitories. Theodore will provide access. Neville looked alarmed. Won't that be dangerous? If Umbridge catches us, she'll be distracted, Wednesday said with quiet certainty. I've arranged a suitable diversion. The diversion proved more dramatic than even Wednesday's allies anticipated. At dinner that evening, the Weasley twins unleashed their legendary swamp in the East Wing corridor, but this time with an unexpected addition. As students and faculty rushed to witness the chaos, the swamp's murky waters began forming into humanoid shapes that bore striking resemblances to various Ministry officials in compromising positions. A particularly detailed mud figure of Cornelius Fudge appeared to be cowering before a larger mud Voldemort, while a perfect miniature Umbridge simulacrum repeatedly bowed and scraped before both. Sweet Merlin, Hermione breathed as they observed from a safe distance. The twins have outdone themselves. With some assistance, Wednesday acknowledged. Thing provided certain artistic enhancements. Sure enough, the disembodied hand could be glimpsed occasionally, darting between mud figures to adjust details and poses with sculptor's precision. Umbridge's face had turned an alarming shade of puce as she frantically attempted to vanish the magical mud creations, only to have them reform in even more embarrassing configurations. When a particularly inspired mud portrait showed her kissing a locket with Fudge's face inside, she let out a shriek of pure rage. Weasleys! Detention for the rest of your natural lives. But Fred and George were nowhere to be found, having wisely made themselves scarce the moment the enchantment activated. Umbridge turned on the gathered students, her eyes wild. All of you, return to your dormitories immediately. Inquisitorial squad, to me. As the crowd dispersed, Wednesday nodded to her companions. Now's our opportunity. Theodore will meet us at the agreed location. They slipped away during the confusion, making their way to an unused classroom in the dungeons where Theodore not waited, looking nervous but resolute. Umbridge has completely lost it, he reported. She's got the entire inquisitorial squad searching for the Weasleys. Malfoy's practically frothing at the mouth. One of the mud figures showed him and his father bowing to a half-blood Dark Lord. Factually accurate, Wednesday noted. Can you get us into the Slytherin common room? Theodore nodded. Most of my housemates are either helping Umbridge or watching the show. We'll have about 20 minutes before anyone returns. He led them through the labyrinthine dungeon passages, eventually stopping before a blank stone wall. Pure blood supremacy, he muttered, looking faintly embarrassed at the password. The wall slid open, revealing the Slytherin common room with its green-tinged underwater light filtering through windows that looked out into the depths of the Black Lake. Charming, Hermione commented dryly, eyeing the snake motifs and dark leather furniture. Where's this passage supposed to start? Neville asked, keeping close to Wednesday. According to Umbridge's documents, behind Salazar's portrait. Wednesday pointed to an imposing painting of Slytherin himself that dominated one wall. Unlike most wizarding portraits, this one remained eerily still, the painted eyes following visitors with reptilian focus. That's not a normal portrait, Theodore warned. It doesn't speak, but it's definitely aware. No one approaches it unless absolutely necessary. Wednesday stepped directly before the painting, studying it with her unblinking gaze. Interesting. The enchantment is ancient, predating modern portrait magic. She raised her hand toward the canvas. It doesn't contain a personality imprint but something older. A fragment of consciousness. Wednesday, maybe you shouldn't, Hermione began, but fell silent as Wednesday addressed the portrait in Parseltongue. The sibilant hisses that emerged from Wednesday's mouth caused the others to step back in shock. Theodore's eyes widened. You're a Parselmouth. But your family isn't. The Addams family collects abilities like other families collect china, Wednesday replied calmly, then resumed her serpentine conversation with the portrait. The painted Slytherin inclined his head slightly, the first movement they'd seen from it. Then, to everyone's amazement, the portrait swung forward, revealing a narrow passage behind it. What did you say to it? Luna asked, fascinated. I greeted it as a fellow practitioner of forbidden knowledge, Wednesday answered. And I mentioned that my great-great-grandmother on the front side was a renowned serpent speaker in the Carpathian covens. The passage beyond was narrow and descended steeply, the walls lined with carvings of intertwined serpents that occasionally moved in the wan light. Wednesday led the way, with Luna close behind. Theodore positioned himself between them and Hermione and Neville, his wand drawn and ready. Slytherin's true chamber, Wednesday observed as they descended. The Chamber of Secrets was designed to house the basilisk. This passage serves a different purpose. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper, and a strange vibration seemed to emanate from the stones themselves. After several minutes, the passage opened into a perfectly circular room beneath the lake. Unlike the opulent Chamber of Secrets, this space was austere, a scholar's workspace rather than a monument. In the center stood a plain stone pedestal supporting what appeared to be a small, unadorned box made of some dull black metal. Is that it? Neville asked, sounding disappointed. The artifact everyone's searching for. No, Wednesday replied, approaching the pedestal carefully. That's just the container. Before she could reach it, a shimmering barrier of energy manifested, blocking their approach. Ancient runes glowed along the floor, forming a complex ward pattern. Blood magic, Hermione identified, kneeling to examine the runes. It requires Slytherin's blood to pass. Which is why Umbridge needs someone from an old Slytherin family, Theodore realized. Like Malfoy. Wednesday studied the barrier. The blood requirement is specific, not just any Slytherin descendant will suffice. It needs the closest living blood relative. That would be. Hermione began, then stopped, her eyes widening. You know who himself. Precisely. Wednesday circled the barrier. Though there may be alternatives. Blood magic often recognizes magical affinity as well as direct descent. Luna moved to stand beside Wednesday, her dreamy expression focused for once. The rune pattern is incomplete, she observed, pointing to a section of the circle. See how it fragments here? Someone has already tampered with the ward. Wednesday nodded approvingly. Good observation. Someone with significant knowledge of ancient blood wards has begun dismantling this protection. Recently. Dumbledore? Neville suggested. No, Wednesday replied. The magical signature is different. More, desperate. Theodore had been examining the walls, which contained shelves of ancient texts and artifacts. These aren't dark objects, he noted with surprise. They're just, old magic. Knowledge that's been forgotten. That's what the Ministry fears most, Wednesday said. Not dark magic, but uncontrolled magic. Knowledge that exists outside their carefully constructed system. Hermione had moved to examine the texts as well. These are incredible. Spell theory that predates the established schools of transfiguration. Approaches to magic that don't rely on wand movements at all. The foundations of magic as practiced before Ministry standardization, Wednesday confirmed. Exactly what Slytherin wanted to preserve, knowledge unfettered by political considerations. A soft, urgent tapping interrupted them. Thing had followed them down and was now frantically gesturing toward the passage. Someone's coming, Wednesday translated. We need to leave. They hurried back up the passage, barely making it into the Slytherin common room before voices became audible from the dungeon corridor outside. Theodore quickly guided them to a concealed side door. Servants' entrance from the castle's early days, he explained. It'll take you back to the main dungeon corridor, away from where the others are entering. As they prepared to slip away, Wednesday turned to Theodore. I'll need a sample of your blood for further research. He hesitated only briefly before extending his arm. Just don't use it to resurrect any ancestors. The Knot family tree has some branches best left dormant. No promises, Wednesday replied, collecting a small vial of blood with practiced efficiency. Meet me tomorrow night in the Forbidden Forest. Eastern boundary, where the Thestrals gather. The following day passed in tense anticipation. News of the mud figure incident had spread throughout the school, enhanced by increasingly dramatic retellings. By lunchtime, the story included Umbridge wrestling a mud fudge into submission and the swamp developing sentience and proposing marriage to Professor Sprout. The real impact, however, was Umbridge's reaction. New educational decrees appeared hourly, each more restrictive than the last. The inquisitorial squad patrolled the corridors with unprecedented authority, and Filch was observed gleefully oiling what appeared to be thumbscrews in his office. She's unraveling, Hermione observed during a quiet conversation in the library. These decrees aren't even logical anymore. One prohibits unnecessary thinking during scheduled recreation periods. Fear rarely produces logical responses, Wednesday replied, carefully transcribing information from a restricted text on blood wards. Umbridge senses she's losing control but doesn't understand how or why. What exactly are you planning for tonight? Neville asked nervously. A ritual to identify the blood connection between Theodore and Slytherin's ward, Wednesday explained. If we can quantify the magical affinity, we may be able to modify the blood requirement. Luna looked up from her own research. You think Theodore could access the artifact? Not alone, Wednesday replied. But combined with my family's expertise in blood magic and your collective magical signatures, we might create a temporary bypass. Hermione frowned. Blood magic is heavily restricted by the ministry. For good reason, it's dangerous and unpredictable. Only when practiced by the untrained, Wednesday countered. My family has refined blood rituals for centuries. We understand the precise exchange rates of vitality, intent, and magical resonance. Exchange rates? Neville looked alarmed. That sounds like sacrifice. All magic requires sacrifice, Wednesday said matter-of-factly. Conventional spells sacrifice magical energy. Potions sacrifice ingredient properties. Blood magic simply makes the transaction more transparent. Before they could debate further, a commotion from the library entrance caught their attention. Umbridge had arrived with several inquisitorial squad members and appeared to be interrogating Madame Pants about student access to restricted materials. Wednesday calmly closed her books and slid them into her enchanted satchel. Time to relocate. Meet at the edge of the forest at midnight. They separated smoothly, each taking different exits from the library to avoid suspicion. Wednesday, however, made no attempt to hide her departure, walking directly past Umbridge with her usual measured stride. "Miss Adams." Umbridge called, her voice artificially sweet. "Just the student I was hoping to find." Wednesday paused, turning slowly to face the High Inquisitor. "Professor Umbridge. How unfortunate." Umbridge's smile tightened. "I've received reports that you've been accessing highly inappropriate reading materials. Materials concerning blood magic and ancient rituals." "For historical context only," Wednesday replied. "Understanding the evolution of magical theory requires examining its foundations." "Nevertheless," Umbridge continued, "such materials are restricted for a reason. I'll need to confiscate any notes or books you've collected on these topics." Wednesday's expression remained unchanged. "My research materials are protected under Educational Decree 24, Paragraph 7, which guarantees students' right to academic materials for approved coursework." "Approved?" Umbridge spluttered. "I have approved no such coursework." Professor Binns assigned an extended essay on evolving approaches to magical theory, preministry to modern era, Wednesday countered. "My topic was approved last month. I have the documentation if you'd like to review it." From her satchel, Wednesday produced a perfectly legitimate-looking approval form, complete with Binns's signature. The fact that the ghostly professor had signed it while under the influence of Wednesday's modified Veritaserum, and had no memory of doing so, was a detail she chose not to mention. Umbridge snatched the form, examining it with narrowed eyes. "This appears in order," she admitted reluctantly. "However, as High Inquisitor, I can overrule. You can appeal to the Hogwarts Board of Governors to change established academic procedures," Wednesday interrupted calmly. "Until then, Educational Decree 15 clearly states that previously approved academic projects maintain their authorization unless formally revoked through proper channels." The surrounding students had fallen silent, watching the confrontation with a mixture of fear and awe. Umbridge, aware of her audience, visibly struggled to maintain her authority. "Very well, Miss Adams," she finally said, her voice dangerously sweet. "Continue your research. But be advised that the Inquisitorial Squad will be paying special attention to your activities from now on." She gestured to Draco Malfoy and Pansy Parkinson. "Mr. Malfoy, Miss Parkinson, you will monitor Miss Adams's movements. Report anything unusual directly to me." Wednesday regarded her newly assigned shadows with mild interest. "How educational. I've always been fascinated by the psychological dynamics of surveillance states." Umbridge's face flushed an ugly red. "You would do well to mind your attitude, young lady. Many students have found themselves facing expulsion for less. Many students lack family lawyers specialized in educational rights violations," Wednesday replied. "The Adams family has retained the firm of Grimshaw, Mortimer, and Blackwood for 12 generations. They particularly enjoy cases involving administrative overreach." Without waiting for a response, Wednesday turned and walked away, Malfoy and Parkinson reluctantly falling into step several paces behind her. Shaking Malfoy and Parkinson proved trivially simple. Wednesday led them on a winding path through the castle, eventually entering Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. The moment they hesitated at the threshold, Malfoy unwilling to enter a girl's bathroom and Parkinson reluctant to face Myrtle's infamous tantrums, Wednesday activated a hidden passage behind the sinks that only she, as a Parselmouth, could access. By the time her shadows gathered enough courage to enter, she had vanished completely, leaving them to face Myrtle's enthusiastic wrath when they disturbed her wailing session. Wednesday emerged from a different passage near the Ravenclaw Tower, where Luna waited with news. "The ghosts are gathering in the East Wing," Luna reported, her eyes wide with excitement. "They're saying they feel a presence of death in the castle. They think it's you." "Interesting," Wednesday replied. "Hogwarts ghosts are unusually perceptive about magical affinities. They want to speak with you," Luna continued. "The Grey Lady specifically asked for you by name. She never speaks to students." This information warranted investigation. Together, they made their way to the rarely used East Wing, where an unprecedented gathering of Hogwarts ghosts floated in solemn conference, nearly Headless Nick, the Grey Lady, the Bloody Baron, the Fat Friar, and even Moaning Myrtle, who had apparently abandoned her bathroom to attend. The ghosts fell silent as Wednesday and Luna approached. Then, to Luna's astonishment, each ghost bowed deeply to Wednesday. "Daughter of Death's favored," the Grey Lady said, her voice ethereal but clear. "We recognize your bloodline." "Fascinating," Wednesday replied. "You perceive the Addams family's particular relationship with mortality." The Bloody Baron drifted forward, his silvery blood glistening in the dim light. "We have guarded the school's secrets for centuries. But your presence changes things. The balance shifts." "What balance?" Wednesday asked. "Between knowledge preserved and knowledge concealed," the Grey Lady answered. "Between what students are permitted to learn and what they must discover for themselves." Nearly Headless Nick adjusted his ruff nervously. "We ghosts exist in between, not truly of the living world, yet not fully departed. We see things the living miss. Patterns through time." "And what pattern brings you together now?" Wednesday questioned. The Fat Friar spoke, his usually jolly face somber. "The castle itself is waking. Old magic stirs beneath the foundations. The Founder's gift seeks a worthy recipient. The artifact in Slytherin's vault," Wednesday realized. The ghosts exchanged glances. "More than an artifact," the Grey Lady said softly. "A legacy. My mother's final collaboration with Salazar before their disagreement." "Rowena Ravenclaw worked with Slytherin on this secret project?" Luna asked, her dreamy voice cutting through the ghostly conference. "All the founders contributed," the Grey Lady confirmed. "Though few know this truth. The vault contains not a weapon, but a foundation, the original Hogwarts Charter, inscribed with magic so powerful it defined how magic itself would be taught for a millennium." Wednesday processed this revelation. A magical document that established the fundamental approach to wizarding education. "And it can be modified?" "By those with the right to do so," the Bloody Baron intoned. "Blood of the Founders, united in purpose, can reshape the Charter's parameters. Which is why Umbridge seeks it," Wednesday concluded. "Control the Charter, control magical education itself. Eliminate undesirable forms of magic at their source." "And why Dumbledore protects it," Luna added. "He wants to maintain his own vision of how magic should be taught." The Grey Lady drifted closer to Wednesday. "We ghosts have watched as magic narrowed over centuries, spells standardized, creatures classified, practices restricted. The living world has forgotten how wild and wonderful magic once was." "My family remembers," Wednesday replied. "We preserve traditions others have abandoned as dark or primitive." "Which is why we called you here," nearly Headless Nick said. "We can help you access what you seek, the full truth about the Founder's Charter." Moaning Myrtle, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly piped up. "I know what Umbridge is planning. I heard her talking to herself in the prefect's bathroom. She's going to use the inquisitorial squad to access all the house dormitories tonight, searching for evidence to expel Potter and his friends. A distraction, Wednesday realized. While the castle focuses on her educational crusade, she'll make her move on the vault, Luna finished. The bloody Baron made a guttural sound of anger. Slytherin's legacy was never intended for ministry puppets. It was meant to preserve magical knowledge for worthy students, regardless of blood status or house affiliation. Then we'll need to reach it first, Wednesday stated. Tonight's ritual just became more urgent. The ghosts conferred briefly among themselves, then the Grey Lady approached Wednesday again. We will help you. Each of us can show you a secret of our respective houses, knowledge that, combined, may allow you to bypass Slytherin's blood ward. The founders built Hogwarts with connections between all houses, the fat friar explained. Secret passages, hidden rooms, magical confluences where the boundaries between houses blur. Like the prophecy pool, Wednesday noted. Accessible only through cooperation between houses. Precisely, nearly headless Nick confirmed. Umbridge seeks Slytherin's blood key, but there exists another approach, one requiring harmony rather than heritage. The Grey Lady gestured to Luna. Your friend walks the path of true Ravenclaw wisdom, seeing beyond conventional perception. Together, you might succeed where the ministry will fail. Wednesday inclined her head slightly. Show us these house secrets. We'll integrate them into tonight's ritual. For the next hour, the ghosts led Wednesday and Luna on a remarkable tour of Hogwarts' hidden architecture. Each house ghost revealed a concealed room or passage unknown even to the Marauder's map, places where the founders had embedded their purest magical philosophies into the castle itself. Hufflepuff's nurturing garden, hidden beneath the kitchens, where plants responded directly to emotional intent rather than magical instruction. Gryffindor's forge room, sealed behind his portrait, where magical artifacts could be created through courage and conviction rather than technical skill. Ravenclaw's thought pool, where abstract ideas could be made briefly tangible through concentrated intellect. Most valuable was the Bloody Baron's revelation of Slytherin's true contribution to Hogwarts, not the Chamber of Secrets with its basilisk, but a network of self-sustaining magical conductors throughout the castle that amplified all magic performed within its walls. Slytherin understood that magical potential varies naturally, the Baron explained as he showed them a central node hidden behind a serpentine carving. These conductors ensure that even students with modest innate power can perform magic beyond their natural capacity while within Hogwarts. The great equalizer, Wednesday observed. Ensuring magical education remained accessible to all with the gift, regardless of their inherent strength. A truth long forgotten, the Baron agreed. Salazar believed in magical supremacy, yes, but based on dedication and understanding, not merely blood inheritance. By the time they finished their ghostly tour, Wednesday had collected samples from each house's magical nexus, a drop of water from Hufflepuff's nurturing spring, ash from Gryffindor's forge, a solidified thought strand from Ravenclaw's pool, and magical residue from Slytherin's conductor node. These will supplement the ritual components, she told Luna as they finally parted from their spectral guides. Combined with Theodore's blood sample, we may be able to create a temporary key to the vault. The ghosts have never revealed these secrets before, Luna noted as they hurried toward the Forbidden Forest, where Hermione and Neville would be waiting. Not in centuries of Hogwarts history. Times of transition often inspire unusual alliances, Wednesday replied. The ghosts sense approaching change, they're choosing sides. Luna glanced at her curiously. And which side are we on? Wednesday's dark eyes gleamed in the fading light. The side of unvarnished truth, regardless of who it vindicates or condemns. The only side worth fighting for. The Forbidden Forest at midnight lived up to its name. Shadows seemed to move independently of their sources, and distant howls created a dissonant chorus that set human nerves on edge. For Wednesday, however, the oppressive atmosphere felt almost homey, reminiscent of the swamp behind Adam's Manor. Neville, Hermione, and Theodore waited at the appointed meeting place, a small clearing where Thestrals gathered to feed. The skeletal horses watched with intelligent interest as Wednesday and Luna arrived. "We were getting worried," Hermione whispered. "Umbridge has the Inquisitorial squad patrolling everywhere." "We had an informative detour," Wednesday explained, removing ritual components from her satchel. "The Hogwarts ghosts have provided additional materials for tonight's work." Theodore eyed the strange collection of items with trepidation. "What exactly are we doing here? You mentioned identifying my connection to Slytherin's bloodline, but..." "That's just part of it," Wednesday replied. "We're creating a magical key that combines elements of all four houses, a skeleton key to bypass the blood ward on the vault." She worked methodically, arranging stones in a precise pattern while Luna distributed candles at specific points. Hermione, despite her reservations about blood magic, couldn't help but be fascinated by the technical precision of Wednesday's preparations. "This isn't like any ritual I've read about," she observed. "The geometrical arrangement is almost mathematical. Blood magic, properly practiced, is the most precise magical discipline," Wednesday explained. "Each component must balance perfectly: intent, sacrifice, and outcome." Neville helped place the four house elements at cardinal points of the ritual circle: north for Gryffindor's Forge Ash, east for Ravenclaw's Thought Strand, south for Hufflepuff's Spring Water, and west for Slytherin's Conductor Residue. "Where do I fit in?" Theodore asked nervously. "The center," Wednesday directed. "Your blood connects to Slytherin's lineage, however distantly. It provides the foundation for our working." As they completed the preparations, the Thestrals grew increasingly interested, moving closer to the ritual circle. One particularly bold creature stepped forward, extending its skeletal head toward Wednesday. "They sensed the proximity of death magic," she explained, allowing the Thestral to sniff her hand. "My family has always had an affinity with death-touched creatures." When everything was in place, the 5 students positioned themselves around the circle. Wednesday produced a small silver knife with the Adam's crest on its handle. "Each contribution must be voluntary," she instructed. "A small amount of blood, freely given, with clear intent. Focus on your house's fundamental quality as you make your offering." One by one, they stepped forward. Hermione for Gryffindor, nervous but determined, focusing on courage. Neville for Hufflepuff, surprisingly steady-handed, concentrating on loyalty. Luna for Ravenclaw, dreamily serene, embodying wisdom. Theodore for Slytherin, tense but committed, channeling ambition. Wednesday went last, cutting her palm with practiced ease. "I offer Adam's blood, which flows outside conventional categories. Neither light nor dark, but true to its own nature." As the last drop fell, the ritual circle began to glow with cold blue fire that cast no heat. The house elements dissolved, mixing with the blood samples to create a swirling vortex of magical energy that rose into the air, then coalesced into a small, dense object that hovered above the center stone. "The key," Wednesday said softly, reaching for it. Before her fingers could close around it, a sickeningly sweet voice cut through the night. "Well, well, well. What have we here?" Dolores Umbridge stepped into the clearing, flanked by Malfoy, Crabbe, Goyle, and several other Inquisitorial squad members. Their wands were drawn and aimed at the ritual participants. "Blood magic in the Forbidden Forest," Umbridge continued, her voice trembling with vindictive glee. "Grounds for immediate expulsion, I believe. Perhaps even an investigation by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement." Wednesday remained calm, her hand still extended toward the hovering key. "Professor Umbridge. Your timing is impeccable." "Step away from that, whatever it is," Umbridge demanded, her wand trained on Wednesday. "Mr. Malfoy, confiscate their wands." Malfoy moved forward, only to stop abruptly as the Thestrals suddenly shifted, positioning themselves protectively around the ritual circle. Though Malfoy couldn't see them, he clearly sensed something blocking his path. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice rising. "There's something here." Thestrals, Wednesday explained calmly. Death horses. Visible only to those who have witnessed death. They seem to have opinions about your interruption. Umbridge's face contorted with fury. Those beasts should have been eliminated years ago. Dangerous half-breed creatures. The largest Thestral snorted angrily, pawing the ground with its skeletal hoof. Umbridge flinched despite herself. I wouldn't antagonize them further, Wednesday advised. They're quite intelligent, and they hold grudges. Umbridge regained her composure, her toad-like face setting in determined lines. Enough of this nonsense. All of you are hereby expelled from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Your wands will be confiscated pending an investigation into illegal magical practices. I think not, Wednesday replied, finally closing her hand around the hovering key. The moment her fingers touched it, a pulse of magic emanated outward, causing the Thestrals to rear dramatically. In the confusion, several things happened simultaneously. Luna and Neville released handfuls of what appeared to be ordinary seeds but were actually Sprout's experimental hybridized plants. Upon contact with the forest floor, they burst into rapid growth, creating a tangled barrier between the ritual circle and the inquisitorial squad. Hermione cast a perfect disillusionment charm over the ritual participants, while Theodore activated a small object from his pocket, a gift from Wednesday, that created a disorienting fog. Stop them! Umbridge shrieked, firing stunning spells blindly into the chaos. Wednesday, key in hand, led her companions deeper into the forest through a path only she could see. Behind them, the sounds of Umbridge's rage faded, replaced by the deeper silence of the ancient woods. That was close, Neville gasped when they finally stopped. How did she find us? She didn't, Wednesday replied. She was already in the forest, searching for the entrance to Slytherin's vault. Our ritual likely attracted her attention. Theodore was examining the key in Wednesday's hand. It appeared to be a small, intricately carved stone that shifted between the colors of the four houses. Did it work? He asked. Will this bypass the blood ward? We'll find out tomorrow, Wednesday answered, carefully storing the key in a protective pouch. But first, we need to address our more immediate problem. We've just been expelled, Hermione said, her voice shaking slightly. Umbridge can't actually do that, can she? Without the headmaster's approval? Under Educational Decree 28, she believes she can, Wednesday confirmed. However, she's overlooked several critical factors. Like what? Neville asked desperately. Like the fact that we were never technically in the Forbidden Forest, Wednesday replied, a hint of satisfaction in her normally expressionless voice. Luna nodded, understanding immediately. The Thestrals clearing is classified as part of the Care of Magical Creatures Practical Instruction Area. It's exempt from the Forbidden designation during approved educational activities. And we had approval, Wednesday continued, producing a signed permission form from her pocket. Professor Hagrid authorized our visit to study Thestral behavior for an extra credit assignment. Hermione stared in disbelief. When did you arrange that? 3 days ago, Wednesday replied. Contingency planning is an Addams family specialty. Theodore laughed shakily. So Umbridge just tried to expel us for conducting an approved educational activity? That's grounds for challenging her authority. Precisely, Wednesday confirmed. And when combined with evidence of her true mission at Hogwarts, searching for Slytherin's vault without ministry authorization, it creates a compelling case for the Board of Governors. You've been 3 steps ahead this entire time, Hermione realized. Setting up defenses and countermeasures before they're needed. Preparation prevents unpleasant surprises, Wednesday replied. Now, we need to split up. Theodore, return to Slytherin House through the southeast dungeon entrance, it's rarely monitored. Hermione and Neville, use this passage. She indicated a hollow tree nearby. It connects to a maintenance tunnel that emerges near the Gryffindor portrait hole. What about you and Luna? Neville asked. We'll take a different route, Wednesday answered. Luna's mother's research laboratory contains information we need before confronting the vault tomorrow. Theodore hesitated before leaving. Umbridge will be watching all of us now. The moment we reappear in the castle, by morning, Umbridge will have more pressing concerns than 5 students she failed to properly expel, Wednesday assured him. Thing has been busy in her office all evening. Luna's expression grew unusually solemn as she led Wednesday through a seldom-used corridor on the castle's west wing. They stopped before a plain wooden door bearing a small bronze plaque, Experimental Charms Laboratory, authorized personnel only. It's been locked since my mother died, Luna explained quietly. Father couldn't bear to clean it out, and Flitwick preserved it as a memorial to her work. Wednesday examined the door. Not just locked. Sealed with multiple charms, preservation spells, repelling enchantments, memory diversion hexes. Most people who walk past forget the door exists, Luna confirmed. I'm only immune because of my blood relation. And because your mind works differently, Wednesday added. You see past illusions naturally. Luna produced a small key from around her neck. I've never been inside. Not since, that day. Wednesday placed a gentle hand on Luna's shoulder, a rare gesture of physical comfort. Your mother's death wasn't an accident. The research we found in the prophecy pool suggests her experiment was deliberately sabotaged. I know, Luna whispered. I've always known something wasn't right. Father wrote about experimental mishaps, but Mother was too careful for a simple accident. The key turned in the lock with surprising ease, as if the door had been waiting for this moment. Inside, the laboratory appeared frozen in time, equipment still set up, notes still spread across worktables, a half-drunk cup of tea preserved under stasis charms. Luna moved through the space reverently, touching her mother's belongings with tentative fingers. It feels like she just stepped out for a moment. Wednesday went directly to the main research area, examining the experimental setup that had claimed Pandora Lovegood's life. She was working on removing magical concealments, she observed. Not just invisibility, but all forms of magical hiding and disguise. The Lovegood Revealer, Luna confirmed, picking up a journal. Her life's work. A spell that would reveal anything hidden by magic, regardless of how powerful the concealment. Wednesday studied the equipment with professional interest. She was close to success. These calculations are elegant. Too close to success, Luna said softly. That's why someone sabotaged her work. Together, they examined Pandora's research notes, reconstructing her final experiment. Wednesday's methodical analysis complemented Luna's intuitive understanding, allowing them to identify the exact point of sabotage, a deliberately flawed rune sequence that caused the revealing spell to implode rather than project outward. The sabotage bears a magical signature, Wednesday noted, passing her wand over the damaged rune stone. Familiar, but disguised. Luna examined her mother's final journal entry, dated the day of her death. She discovered something about Hogwarts. Something hidden in plain sight that would change everything we understand about magical education. The Founder's Charter, Wednesday realized. She found independent evidence of its existence. And someone silenced her before she could reveal it, Luna concluded, her dreamy voice hardening with unusual resolve. Wednesday carefully extracted the key elements of Pandora's research, combining them with her own knowledge of revealing magic. With these notes, we can complete what your mother began. A revealing spell powerful enough to penetrate even the most ancient concealments. Including whatever protects the Founder's Charter, Luna added. They worked through the night, refining Pandora's formula and integrating the house-based magical key they'd created in the forest. By dawn, they had constructed a modified version of the Lovegood Revealer, smaller in scope but precisely targeted for their purpose. As they finally prepared to leave the laboratory, Luna paused by her mother's workbench, running her fingers over the abandoned teacup. She would have liked you, she told Wednesday. Mother always said truth was worth any price. A philosophy the Addams family shares, Wednesday replied. Your mother's work won't be forgotten, Luna. or left unfinished. Morning brought chaos to Hogwarts. Students gathered in excited clusters throughout the Great Hall, whispering about the previous night's events. Apparently, Umbridge had returned from the forest to find her office completely transformed, every surface covered in animated carvings of eyes that followed her movements, her precious kitten plates replaced by portraits of infamous dark arts practitioners, and her educational decrees rearranged to spell out messages questioning her competence. Most dramatically, her private correspondence with Cornelius Fudge had somehow found its way into the latest edition of the Quibbler, complete with annotations highlighting her unauthorized search for Slytherin's vault and her plans to restructure magical education according to pureblood preferential guidelines. "Thing is remarkably resourceful," Wednesday commented as she and Luna joined Hermione and Neville at breakfast. The correspondence was particularly difficult to extract from her enchanted filing system. Hermione looked both impressed and horrified. "You do realize you've essentially declared open war on the Ministry of Magic?" "Not war," Wednesday corrected. "Just a clarification of facts. The wizarding public deserves to know what educational reforms Umbridge actually intends." At the head table, Umbridge was noticeably absent, while the other professors maintained carefully neutral expressions that occasionally slipped to reveal flickers of satisfaction. "What's our next move?" Neville asked quietly. "Umbridge will be looking for revenge once she recovers from the shock. We accessed the vault today," Wednesday replied. "Before either Umbridge or Dumbledore can secure the charter." "Dumbledore's still absent from the castle," Hermione noted. "No one's seen him since he escaped the Ministry's attempt to arrest him." "His absence is strategic," Wednesday said. "He's allowing events to unfold according to his larger plan while maintaining plausible deniability." Theodore joined them briefly, stopping by the Ravenclaw table on his way to Transfiguration. "Malfoy's furious about last night. The Thestrals apparently trampled him during the confusion. He can't see what injured him, which makes the humiliation worse." "Appropriate," Wednesday noted without sympathy. "Is the Slytherin entrance still viable?" Theodore nodded. "Barely. Umbridge has Filch patrolling the dungeons, but he's avoiding the actual Slytherin common room, something about respecting proper magical heritage." "Meet us there at noon," Wednesday instructed. "Most students will be at lunch, and Umbridge is scheduled to call the minister." "How do you know her schedule?" Hermione asked after Theodore departed. Wednesday's expression remained impassive. "Thing has been living in her office for weeks. He maintains a detailed log of her movements." "Your hand keeps a diary?" Neville asked incredulously. "Thing is very organized," Wednesday replied. "And surprisingly literate for a disembodied appendage." At precisely noon, the 5 students converged on the Slytherin common room. Theodore provided access, having scheduled the timing to ensure the room was empty. The portrait of Salazar Slytherin watched them with its unnerving gaze as they approached. "The key," Wednesday said, removing the house-blend magical stone from its pouch. "Combined with the modified Lovegood revealer, it should bypass the blood requirement." Luna held up a small crystal device they had constructed from her mother's research, a prism-like object containing swirling silver mist. "Hold the key to the portrait first," she instructed. "Then I'll activate the revealer." Wednesday pressed the stone key against the portrait's frame, directly over a small, previously unnoticed indentation. The key began to pulse with colored light, red, yellow, blue, and green cycling in rapid sequence. "Now," Wednesday said. Luna pointed the crystal device at the portrait and whispered, "Revelium Maternum," naming the spell in honor of her mother. A beam of pure white light shot from the crystal, enveloping the portrait in a glowing aura. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the portrait began to change, not swinging open as before, but transforming entirely. The painted Slytherin stepped forward, becoming three-dimensional, then shifted form to reveal a doorway shaped like an enormous serpent's mouth. "The true entrance," Wednesday observed. "Hidden beneath a secondary concealment." Beyond the serpent-mouthed doorway lay not the narrow passage they had explored previously, but a grand staircase descending deep beneath the lake. Unlike the Chamber of Secrets with its crude stonework, this passage was finished with polished marble inlaid with precious metals forming complex magical circuits. Slytherin's true legacy, Theodore breathed. Not a monster chamber but a cathedral of knowledge. They descended cautiously, Wednesday leading the way with her wand illuminated. The staircase spiraled downward for what felt like hundreds of feet before opening into a vast, domed chamber that defied the expectations set by the rest of Hogwarts architecture. Instead of medieval Gothic design, the vault resembled something from an entirely different tradition, elements of ancient Egyptian, Roman, and what appeared to be Atlantean architecture blended in harmonious innovation. At the chamber's center stood a raised dais supporting a lectern of white marble. Upon it rested a large, leather-bound volume. "The Founder's Charter," Hermione whispered, her academic excitement overcoming her caution. "The original magical contract that established Hogwarts." As they approached the dais, however, they realized they weren't alone. A figure stepped from the shadows behind the lectern, tall, silver-bearded, and looking entirely unsurprised by their arrival. "Albus Dumbledore," Wednesday acknowledged. "Your timing rivals Professor Umbridge's for theatrical effect." The headmaster smiled benignly. "Miss Adams. I must commend your resourcefulness. Few in Hogwarts history have uncovered so many secrets in such a short time." "You've been watching us," Luna realized. "All along." Observing, Dumbledore corrected gently. "With great interest. Your collaboration across house lines is precisely what Hogwarts was intended to foster." Wednesday's dark eyes narrowed slightly. "Yet you allowed Umbridge to threaten that collaboration at every turn. Curious priorities for a headmaster." "Strategic necessities," Dumbledore replied. "Dolores's presence at Hogwarts serves multiple purposes in the larger conflict. Including drawing attention away from your own interest in the Founder's Charter," Wednesday noted. "While the Ministry hunts for a weapon, you quietly maintain control of the true prize, the magical foundation of wizarding education itself." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled, but a new wariness entered his expression. "You understand more than I anticipated, Miss Adams. The question," Wednesday continued relentlessly, "is why you've maintained the Charter's secrecy. What advantage does keeping students ignorant of Hogwarts' true founding principles provide you?" The chamber fell silent as Dumbledore considered his response. Finally, he sighed. "The Charter represents more than just Hogwarts' founding document. It is a magical contract that shapes how magic itself is taught and understood in Britain. Its parameters determine what forms of magic are accessible to students. You've been using it to control which branches of magic flourish and which diminish," Hermione realized, her voice reflecting her shock. "That's why certain types of magic are no longer taught, even though they're not technically classified as dark arts." "A necessary limitation," Dumbledore explained. "After Grindelwald's rise, it became clear that unrestricted magical education created dangers the wizarding world wasn't prepared to manage. The Charter allowed for adjustments to the magical curriculum on a fundamental level. Blood magic," Wednesday said flatly. "Soul magic. Necromancy. Thought projection. Elemental binding. All reduced to dark classifications not because they're inherently evil, but because they resist Ministry standardization and control. Some restrictions protect us from our worst impulses," Dumbledore countered. "Would you have Hogwarts teach 11-year-olds how to create inferi or bind spirits to their will?" "I would have Hogwarts teach students the truth about all magic," Wednesday replied. "Including its consequences and responsibilities. Fear of knowledge never protected anyone, it only ensures the knowledge resurfaces in its most dangerous forms." Neville, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke. "Is this why my parents couldn't defend themselves against the Cruciatus? Because defensive mind magic was restricted in their education?" Dumbledore's face reflected genuine regret. "The educational choices made by previous generations had consequences none of us fully anticipated, Mr. Longbottom. Yet you maintained those restrictions," Wednesday pointed out. even after seeing their failures. Before Dumbledore could respond, a new voice entered the conversation, high-pitched, breathless with triumph. "So this is where you've been hiding, Dumbledore." Dolores Umbridge stood at the chamber entrance, flanked by Malfoy, Crabbe, Goyle, and several ministry officials in magical law enforcement robes. "The minister will be delighted to learn of your secret headquarters," she continued, advancing into the chamber with her wand raised. "And this," her eyes fell on the charter, widening with greedy recognition. "The Founder's artifact. Exactly as described in the Department of Mysteries records." Wednesday exchanged quick glances with her companions. The situation had just become significantly more complicated. Dumbledore remained calm. "Dolores, I'm afraid you've misunderstood the nature of this chamber and its contents. Save your explanations for your trial," Umbridge snapped, gesturing for the ministry officials to move forward. "Seize him, and that book." What happened next occurred with such speed that even Wednesday, with her exceptional observational skills, couldn't track all the simultaneous events. Dumbledore raised his wand in a complex pattern, creating a shimmering barrier between the ministry group and the dais. At the same moment, Umbridge fired a stunning spell that rebounded off the barrier, striking Crabbe instead. The Slytherin boy collapsed with a grunt, knocking Goyle off balance. Malfoy, attempting to circulate around the barrier, found himself face to face with Theodore. "You traitor!" he snarled, raising his wand. "Wait until my father doesn't dictate my choices anymore," Theodore replied, casting a perfect shield charm as Malfoy attacked. The ministry officials, more competent than Umbridge's student squad, coordinated their assault on Dumbledore's barrier while trying to isolate the students from the conflict. "Get behind me," Dumbledore instructed Wednesday and her friends. "This situation has become dangerous." "The situation was always dangerous," Wednesday replied, moving not behind Dumbledore but toward the charter itself. "The danger was just concealed beneath polite fictions." Luna, understanding Wednesday's intent, positioned herself to block Umbridge's line of sight. Hermione and Neville, catching on, created further distraction by simultaneously casting Lumos Maxima, temporarily blinding everyone in the chamber. In that moment of confusion, Wednesday placed her hands on the Founder's charter and spoke a phrase in ancient Parseltongue, words taught to her by the portrait of Salazar Slytherin during their first encounter. The chamber shuddered. The charter began to glow with an intense light that pulsed outward in concentric rings, passing through everyone present. As each ring touched them, their magical concealments dissolved, not just invisibility charms and disguises, but deeper deceptions embedded in their very being. Dumbledore's carefully maintained grandfatherly appearance flickered, briefly revealing the powerful, battle-hardened wizard beneath. Umbridge's human form wavered, showing something toad-like and monstrous lurking beneath her pink cardigan. Most dramatically, Malfoy's left forearm became visible through his torn sleeve, revealing not the dark mark everyone expected, but a different symbol, one binding him to a magical oath none of them recognized. "What have you done?" Umbridge shrieked, trying desperately to re-establish her concealment charms. "Activated the charter's primary function," Wednesday replied calmly. "Truth revelation. The Founders created Hogwarts as a place where magical truth could be pursued without political interference. The charter enforces that principle when properly awakened." Dumbledore was staring at Wednesday with a mixture of shock and reluctant admiration. "The Parselmouth key. Of course. Salazar's final failsafe, accessible only to those he deemed worthy." The magic continued to pulse outward, beyond the chamber, spreading throughout Hogwarts itself. In classrooms and corridors, common rooms and offices, concealment spells failed. Secrets became visible. Truths long hidden rose to the surface. "Stop this immediately," Umbridge demanded, her voice cracking with panic. "This is a violation of Ministry decree, this predates the Ministry," Wednesday interrupted. "The Charter established magical education principles that the Ministry later co-opted and restricted. Its authority supersedes political convenience." The chamber's architecture was transforming around them, expanding to reveal shelves containing ancient texts and artifacts, the founder's original teaching materials, preserved but hidden for centuries. Knowledge deemed too dangerous or empowering for general access. Dumbledore approached Wednesday, his expression grave. "Miss Adams, you cannot understand all the consequences of what you've done. Some secrets protect us from dangers we're not prepared to face." "Secrets protect those who keep them, headmaster," Wednesday replied. "Rarely those kept in ignorance." Luna had moved to examine the charter itself, which now lay open on the lectern. "The original agreement," she said wonderingly. "It's so different from what we practice now. Magic wasn't divided into subjects and categories, it was taught as a unified whole, with students progressing according to their individual affinities. The natural approach to magical education," Wednesday confirmed. "Before standardization and restriction became the norm." The ministry officials were looking increasingly confused, their wands lowering as the charter's magic affected them. One turned to Umbridge. "Madam Undersecretary, these orders, they don't match what Minister Fudge publicly stated. Why are we really here?" Umbridge's face contorted with fury. "You will obey your instructions without question. Seize that book and arrest everyone present." But her authority was visibly crumbling. The truth-revealing magic had exposed too many contradictions between her stated mission and her actual objectives. Taking advantage of the confusion, Wednesday addressed the chamber at large. "The charter has been reactivated. Hogwarts will begin returning to its original educational principles, teaching magic as it truly exists, not as political expediency dictates. You have no authority to make such changes." Umbridge spluttered. "The charter recognizes those who access it in good faith," Wednesday replied. "It responds to intent, not titles." Dumbledore, watching the transformation with calculating eyes, finally spoke. "What happens now, Miss Adams? You've upended centuries of educational policy in a single afternoon." "Now the truth speaks for itself," Wednesday answered. "Every secret you and the ministry have concealed about magical education becomes visible to those affected by it. Students, parents, and faculty can make informed choices rather than manipulated ones." The chamber continued to transform, the truth-revealing magic spreading throughout Hogwarts. In the library, restricted books became visible to all students. In classrooms, enchantments that had subtly guided teaching toward ministry-approved methods dissolved. Throughout the castle, the very nature of how magic was presented began to shift. "You've released forces beyond your control," Dumbledore warned, though his tone lacked conviction. "The wizarding world established these boundaries for reasons that seemed necessary at the time." "Necessary to whom?" Wednesday countered. "To those in power, certainly. Less so to those denied knowledge that was rightfully theirs." As they spoke, a new presence entered the chamber, dozens of ghostly forms, led by the Grey Lady and the Bloody Baron. Behind them floated the spectral shapes of thousands of former Hogwarts students, stretching back through the centuries. "The charter calls all who learned within these walls to witness its restoration," the Grey Lady announced, her voice stronger than any of them had ever heard it. "Hogwarts awakens to its true purpose once more." In a final, dramatic surge, the magic from the charter condensed into a brilliant column of light that shot upward through the ceiling, presumably continuing through the lake and castle above. When it reached the Great Hall, as they would later learn, it formed into a new, fifth table, one that belonged to no specific house but welcomed students from all. Umbridge, her authority completely undermined, backed toward the entrance. "The minister will hear of this. There will be consequences." "There already are consequences," Wednesday replied calmly. "Just not the ones you anticipated." As the ministry contingent retreated in disarray, Dumbledore turned to Wednesday one last time. "I hope you understand what you've set in motion, Miss Adams. Not all change is improvement. And not all tradition deserves preservation," she countered. "The students of Hogwarts deserve to learn magic as it truly is, beautiful, dangerous, and free from arbitrary restrictions." With a last, inscrutable look, Dumbledore departed, leaving Wednesday and her friends alone with the ghosts and the awakened charter. Luna approached the lectern reverently. My mother would have loved to see this. Her research led to this moment, in a way. She helped make it possible, Wednesday acknowledged. The Lovegood Revealer was the key to activating the charter's true function. Hermione was examining the ancient texts now visible on the shelves. These books contain magical theory I've never even heard of. Approaches to spellcasting that contradict everything we've been taught. Not contradict, Wednesday corrected. Complement. Magic has always been more diverse than the standardized curriculum acknowledges. Neville had picked up a small, unassuming volume about plant sentience communication. Will we be allowed to learn from these? Or will the Ministry just seal this chamber again? They can try, Wednesday replied. But the Charter's awakening is already spreading through the castle. By dinner, every student will know that the foundations of their magical education have been adjusted. Theodore, who had been examining the chamber's architecture, rejoined them. The Slytherin common room is in chaos. Apparently, a lot of my housemates had magical concealments that just failed spectacularly. Several were hiding family curse marks, one was actually 30 years old and using aging potions to appear younger, and Pansy Parkinson's pure blood heritage turns out to include a vampire great-grandmother. Truth is rarely convenient, Wednesday observed, but always illuminating. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the ghosts parted to form an honor guard of sorts. The Grey Lady approached Wednesday directly. Daughter of Death's favored, she said formally. Hogwarts recognizes your service. The castle will remember. I didn't do this alone, Wednesday replied, gesturing to her friends. For houses, working together, as the founders intended. The Bloody Baron made a sound almost like laughter, shocking those who had never heard anything but moans from the taciturn ghost. Slytherin would approve. He valued cunning in pursuit of worthy goals, not merely self-advancement. The castle feels different, Luna noted as they ascended the staircase. Like it's breathing more easily. The magical suppression embedded in its walls has lifted, Wednesday explained. Hogwarts was designed to amplify and nurture magic in all its forms. For centuries, it's been forced to restrict and channel instead. When they emerged into the Slytherin common room, they found the castle in productive chaos. Students filled the corridors, excitedly discussing newfound magical insights that had simply appeared in their minds. Portraits that had remained silent for generations were suddenly speaking, sharing historical knowledge previously deemed unsuitable. Most dramatically, the house distinctions that had divided students so rigidly seemed to be spontaneously reorganizing. Gryffindors and Slytherins could be seen in actual civil conversation, while Ravenclaws eagerly shared newly accessible research with anyone interested, regardless of house. The Charter's influence, Hermione realized. It's restoring the original concept of houses as centers of specialized knowledge, not competing factions. Wednesday nodded. The founders never intended houses to isolate students from each other. They were meant to be communities of shared affinity, not fortresses of exclusion. As they made their way toward the Great Hall, they encountered Professor McGonagall, who appeared both flustered and oddly rejuvenated. Miss Adams, she acknowledged with a nod that contained equal parts exasperation and respect. I assume you're responsible for the transformations occurring throughout the castle. I merely activated what was already present, Wednesday replied. The Charter has restored itself to its original purpose. McGonagall's lips thinned, but there was something like approval in her eyes. 50 points to Ravenclaw for historical research of exceptional thoroughness. And perhaps 50 points from Ravenclaw for appending the entire educational system without consulting the faculty first. A fair assessment, Wednesday conceded. Dumbledore has called an emergency meeting of the Hogwarts Board of Governors, McGonagall continued. I suspect the coming days will be eventful. As McGonagall departed, Luna turned to Wednesday. What happens now? Will they try to reverse what the Charter has done? They can try, Wednesday replied. But Hogwarts itself has awakened to its true purpose. The castle has its own magic, its own will. It won't easily surrender its freedom again. The five friends continued toward the Great Hall, where they found students gathered around the newly manifested fifth table. Unlike the house tables with their distinct colors, this one seemed to shift subtly, reflecting all house colors simultaneously. For those who value knowledge beyond division, Luna read from the inscription that had appeared along its edge. The Founder's Table, open to all who seek truth rather than faction. Wednesday approached the table, running her pale fingers along its ancient wood. This is what Hogwarts was meant to be. Not divided, but united in magical diversity. As they sat down, the first students to claim places at the Founder's Table in over 1,000 years, Wednesday allowed herself the briefest smile. Hogwarts' secrets had been exposed, one by one, culminating in the greatest revelation of all, the truth about magic itself, too vast and wild to be confined by arbitrary categories of light and dark, permitted and forbidden. Around them, the castle continued its transformation, magic flowing more freely through its ancient stones. Ghosts drifted through walls with new purpose, portraits shared long-suppressed knowledge, and students discovered magical affinities previously hidden from them. In the midst of this renaissance, Wednesday Addams opened her journal and made a final entry, operation completed. Hogwarts awakened. Secrets exposed. Truth prevails. Thing, who had rejoined her after his mission in Umbridge's office, patted her hand approvingly. Whatever consequences would follow, Ministry intervention, Dumbledore's countermeasures, the wizarding world's reaction to unrestricted magical education, Wednesday knew that the truth, once revealed, could never be completely hidden again. And that was worth any price. Chapter 3, The headmaster's skull. Dawn broke over a Hogwarts that barely resembled the school it had been just 24 hours earlier. The castle itself seemed more awake somehow, suits of armor moved with newfound purpose, staircases shifted to actively help rather than hinder students, and the very stones radiated a warm magical resonance that even the least sensitive first-years could feel. Wednesday stood at the astronomy tower's highest point, watching as the sunrise illuminated a school in beautiful chaos. Beside her, things scuttled along the stone railing, occasionally pointing toward interesting developments below. Yes, I see them, Wednesday confirmed, noting the group of ministry officials who had arrived at the gates. Fudge's damage control team. They're in for a surprise. The surprise in question became apparent as soon as the officials attempted to enter the grounds. The castle's gates, normally responsive to ministry authorization, remained firmly shut despite the increasingly agitated wand-waving of the delegation's leader. Hogwarts has revoked ministry access privileges, Wednesday observed with satisfaction. The Charter's magic recognizes that the school's autonomy was part of the original founding agreement. Luna drifted up the spiral staircase to join her, looking even more ethereal than usual in the morning light. The Nargles have all disappeared, she announced dreamily. Father always said they feed on suppressed knowledge. Now there's nothing for them to eat. The magical ecosystem adjusts quickly, Wednesday agreed, turning away from the spectacle below. What's happening in the Great Hall? Glorious mayhem, Luna replied with a serene smile. The house tables keep rearranging themselves. Half the Slytherins are sitting with Hufflepuffs comparing family grimoires. The Ravenclaws have started an impromptu study group on thought projection that even the Gryffindors are joining. Wednesday nodded, unsurprised. And the professors? Professor Flitwick's teaching goblin battle charms to anyone interested. He stopped hiding his heritage completely, Luna reported. Professor Sprouts opened the restricted greenhouse sections. And Professor Snape? Yes. He hasn't smiled, obviously, but he's demonstrating potion modifications that aren't in any textbook. Says there's no point maintaining the pretense of ministry-approved curriculum in this new paradigm. Wednesday allowed herself the briefest ghost of a smile. The Charter's influence spreads faster than even I anticipated. With each hour, the original educational approach becomes more firmly established. The door to the tower burst open, and Hermione rushed in, face flushed with excitement. Wednesday. You need to see this. She thrust forward a parchment covered in official-looking script that continually rewrote itself as they watched. The Hogwarts rule book, Hermione explained breathlessly. It's updating itself automatically. Look, all the educational decrees are dissolving. And these older rules about restricted magic are being replaced with safety protocols instead of outright bans. Wednesday examined the parchment with interest. The charter doesn't eliminate boundaries, it replaces arbitrary restrictions with practical safety measures. Magic should be controlled through understanding, not ignorance. Neville and Theodore arrived next, both looking slightly dazed but exhilarated. The venomous tentacula in Greenhouse 4 started talking, Neville reported. Actually talking, in Latin, but still. Professor Sprout says certain magical plants always could communicate, but the knowledge was classified as dangerous botanical sentient studies and restricted 3 centuries ago. The Slytherin common room is completely transformed, Theodore added. Hidden compartments in the walls opened overnight, revealing books, artifacts, and teaching tools that Slytherin himself left for his students. Stuff about magical bloodlines that isn't bigoted nonsense, actual magical theory about how family affinities develop and transfer. Wednesday took in these reports with quiet satisfaction. Everything was proceeding as she had calculated, the Charter's awakening was restoring knowledge in stages, beginning with the least controversial revelations and gradually progressing toward more fundamental truths. But the greatest revelation, Dumbledore's ultimate secret, still remained hidden. The headmaster hasn't been seen since last night, Hermione noted, voicing Wednesday's thoughts. The staff are saying he's meeting with the Board of Governors, but he's preparing countermeasures, Wednesday stated. The Charter's revelations threaten his carefully constructed plans. She turned to her assembled allies. Today we complete our mission. Dumbledore's final secret must be exposed before he can re-establish control. You really think he'll try to reverse what's happened? Neville asked, gesturing toward the transformed castle below. He can't fully reverse it, Wednesday replied. But he can redirect it, channel it into forms that still serve his larger agenda. Dumbledore is nothing if not adaptable. Luna tilted her head thoughtfully. What exactly is his larger agenda? We know he's been manipulating events around Harry, but to what end? That's what we're going to discover, Wednesday said. The Charter's awakening has weakened all magical concealments in the castle, including those protecting Dumbledore's most private repository of secrets. His pensive? Hermione suggested. Something more comprehensive, Wednesday corrected. According to the ghosts, Dumbledore maintains a hidden collection of memories beneath his office, not just his own, but extracted memories from countless others. A private library of moments no one else was meant to witness. Theodore whistled softly. That's borderline illegal. The Wizengamot has strict laws about memory collection. Laws Dumbledore helped write, Wednesday noted, with convenient exemptions for historical preservation and educational research. She pulled a worn parchment from her pocket, a detailed map of Hogwarts that made the Marauder's map look like a child's crayon drawing by comparison. Great Aunt Calpurnia mapped the castle's forgotten passages during the 1738 Goblin Rebellion, Wednesday explained, pointing to a specific section. Including this maintenance tunnel that connects to a void space beneath the headmaster's office. So we're just going to break into Dumbledore's secret memory vault? Neville asked nervously. Not break in, Wednesday corrected. The Charter's magic has already unsealed all knowledge repositories within Hogwarts. We're simply accessing newly available educational resources. Hermione bit her lip. Even with the Charter's changes, Dumbledore's office will still have protections. Which is why we'll need a distraction, Wednesday replied. Something significant enough to draw the staff's attention elsewhere. Thing tapped Wednesday's shoulder insistently, then performed a series of gestures that only she could interpret. An excellent suggestion, she told the sentient hand. The Weasley twins' remaining inventions, combined with strategic placement throughout the castle, should create sufficient chaos. What did it say? Theodore asked, watching Thing with fascination. He suggested a coordinated series of diversions at precisely timed intervals, Wednesday translated. Escalating in apparent severity to ensure maximum staff deployment away from the headmaster's tower. Luna smiled dreamily. Your hand has a devious mind. He takes after my Uncle Fester, Wednesday replied. Now, we should prepare. The memory vault will only be accessible during the confusion following the charter's next integration phase. Next phase? Hermione questioned. The charter releases its magic in waves, Wednesday explained. The first restored hidden knowledge. The second, which began at dawn, is recalibrating the castle's own magic. The third, which will begin at noon, will affect the people themselves, revealing innate magical affinities that may have been suppressed or redirected. You mean we might discover we have abilities we didn't know about? Neville asked, looking both nervous and hopeful. Precisely, Wednesday confirmed. The standardized education system channels students toward predetermined magical disciplines. The charter's original purpose was to help each student discover their unique magical signature without such artificial constraints. Theodore looked thoughtful. No wonder the ministry wants to shut this down. They've spent centuries categorizing and controlling magical ability. Control requires predictability, Wednesday agreed. And true magic is anything but predictable. By mid-morning, rumors flew through the castle like pixies on pepper-up potion. Students whispered about secret rooms appearing in dormitory walls, filled with forgotten magical texts. Portraits that had been silent for generations now offered detailed magical instruction to anyone who asked the right questions. Most dramatically, several students had spontaneously demonstrated rare magical abilities. A third-year Hufflepuff discovered she could communicate with ravens, while a Slytherin prefect found himself instinctively understanding ancient runic languages he'd never studied. The staff seemed divided in their reactions. Flitwick, Sprout, and surprisingly, Snape appeared to embrace the changes, adjusting their teaching methods to incorporate newly accessible knowledge. McGonagall maintained a facade of stern propriety while subtly encouraging students to explore their expanded options. Only a few professors, notably those with ministry connections, seemed disturbed by the transformations occurring throughout the castle. Umbridge herself had barricaded in her office, emerging only to send increasingly desperate owls to the ministry. The few students who glimpsed her reported that her normally pink complexion had taken on a grayish tinge, and she appeared to be packing her belongings. Wednesday and her allies met in the Room of Requirement, which had transformed itself into a perfect planning space, a circular chamber with a detailed model of Hogwarts at its center, showing real-time movements of everyone in the castle. Fred and George have agreed to help, Hermione reported. They say this is exactly the kind of chaos they've dreamed of contributing to. Excellent, Wednesday replied, studying the model castle where tiny figures moved through corridors and rooms. The first diversion should begin in the dungeons, followed by the second near the kitchens, third in the East Wing, and finally the grand finale in the entrance hall. What about Potter? Theodore asked. He's been watching us. I'm pretty sure he suspects we're behind everything that's happened. Harry's confused, Luna observed. The charter's magic is affecting his scar. I saw him pressing his hand against it during breakfast, like it was pulsing. Wednesday nodded, unsurprised. The connection between Potter and Voldemort exists at a magical level the charter recognizes as foreign interference. It's trying to untangle it. You mean it could break their connection? Hermione asked, eyes widening. Possibly, Wednesday replied. But more likely, it's making the connection more visible, to both of them. Which means Potter is starting to perceive things Dumbledore has kept hidden from him. Should we bring him in? Neville suggested. Tell him what we've discovered. Wednesday considered this. Not yet. Potter's loyalty to Dumbledore runs deep. He needs to see evidence of manipulation first, not just hear our claims. She turned to the castle model, where a tiny Dumbledore figure had finally appeared, entering the headmaster's tower. He's returned, Wednesday noted. Earlier than expected. We need to accelerate our timeline. With swift precision, she outlined the adjusted plan. The diversions would begin immediately rather than at noon. They would access the passage beneath the headmaster's office during the third diversion, when most staff would be thoroughly occupied elsewhere. What exactly are we looking for in these memories? Theodore asked as they prepared to separate. The true prophecy about Potter, Wednesday replied. The complete version Dumbledore has hidden even from Harry himself. And evidence of his long-term plan, the real reason he's shaped Harry's life so specifically. Luna's normally dreamy expression sharpened. The old man's greatest lie. Exactly, Wednesday confirmed. Something so fundamental to his plans that exposing it changes everything, especially for Harry Potter. The first diversion exploded in the dungeons with spectacular effect. The Weasley twins had outdone themselves, creating what appeared to be a massive outbreak of carnivorous pudding that oozed from the potions classroom, consuming everything in its path while belching noxious green bubbles that transformed into miniature dragons when popped. Professors Snape and Slughorn led the containment efforts, while Flitwick attempted countercharms that only seemed to make the pudding grow more enthusiastically. Students alternated between fleeing in terror and watching in fascinated delight as the dessert disaster expanded. Brilliant, Theodore muttered as they observed from a safe distance. No one will think to check the headmaster's tower with that happening. The second diversion began precisely 7 minutes later, just as staff were beginning to gain control over the pudding situation. This time, the suits of armor throughout the castle simultaneously began performing an elaborate musical number about goblin rebellions, complete with choreography that involved tossing students, gently, into the air as part of the routine. Phase 2 successful, Hermione confirmed, watching as McGonagall and several other professors rushed to subdue the enthusiastic medal performers. The path to the tower is clear. Wednesday led them through a series of rarely used corridors, eventually stopping before what appeared to be a solid stone wall adorned with a small, easily overlooked carving of a phoenix. The maintenance access, she explained, tracing the phoenix with her finger. Used by house elves to clean areas even the headmaster shouldn't know about. How do we open it? Neville asked, examining the seemingly solid wall. In answer, Wednesday placed thing against the carving. The sentient hand splayed its fingers in a specific pattern, and the wall silently receded, revealing a narrow passage lit by soft blue flames that sprang to life as the opening appeared. House elf magic operates on different principles than wizard magic, Wednesday explained as they entered the passage. The castle recognizes Thing as a magical being with service affiliations. The passage twisted downward in a tight spiral, eventually opening into a small, circular chamber directly beneath the headmaster's office. Unlike the warm, cluttered space above, this room was clinically pristine, walls lined with hundreds of crystal vials containing swirling silver memories, each meticulously labeled with dates and names. Dumbledore's true pensive chamber, Wednesday observed, surveying the collection. More comprehensive than even the ghosts described. The center of the room held a large, ornate pensive significantly older than the one Dumbledore kept in his office. This basin appeared to be carved from a single piece of obsidian, its surface etched with runes even Hermione didn't recognize. This is ancient, Luna whispered, running her fingers along the pensive's edge. Older than Hogwarts itself. A family heirloom, Wednesday confirmed. According to Ravenclaw's ghost, this belonged to Dumbledore's mother's lineage, magical historians specializing in memory preservation. They spread out, examining the labeled vials with growing astonishment. The collection spanned decades, memories from Order members, Ministry officials, Death Eaters, students, and countless others. Many names they recognized, many more they didn't. This is beyond inappropriate, Hermione said, looking disturbed. These are private memories, some extracted without consent, judging by the labels. Indeed, many vials bore notations like, extracted during medical treatment, or, recovered during interrogation, or simply, copied during conversation. Here, Theodore called from a section near the back. These are all about Potter. Dozens of vials, memories from his parents, his relatives, witnesses to events throughout his life. Wednesday joined him, scanning the labels with her penetrating gaze. And these, she said, pointing to a separate shelf, are about the prophecy. Memories of its creation, interpretation, and implementation. Implementation? Neville questioned. Dumbledore's actions based on his understanding of the prophecy, Wednesday clarified, selecting a specific vial. Including his decisions about Potter's placement with abusive Muggle relatives, controlled exposure to danger, and carefully managed information. Luna had discovered another section of particular interest, memories labeled Horcrux Research and Voldemort's Anchors. These might explain the connection to Harry's scar, she suggested. Wednesday nodded. Take that entire shelf. We need to understand what Dumbledore knows about that connection. As they carefully collected key memory vials, a deep gonging sound reverberated throughout the chamber. An alarm? Neville asked nervously. No, Wednesday replied. The third phase of the Charter's awakening has begun. Noon exactly. The castle shuddered around them, magic surging through its very foundations. The crystal vials on the shelves began to vibrate, their contents swirling more actively as if responding to the magical wave passing through Hogwarts. We need to move quickly, Wednesday instructed. Dumbledore will sense the Charter's progression and realize his memory vault might be affected. With practiced efficiency, she organized their extraction of the most critical memories. Hermione handled prophecy-related vials, Luna collected those connecting to Harry's scar, Theodore gathered memories about Dumbledore's long-term plans, and Neville kept watch at the passage entrance. Wednesday herself approached the ancient pensieve, removing a small silver instrument from her pocket, a device resembling a delicate syringe with an hourglass attached to its barrel. What's that? Hermione asked, watching as Wednesday carefully positioned the instrument over the pensieve. A memory extractor created by my great-grandmother, Wednesday explained. It can withdraw specific memories from a pensieve without disturbing the surrounding context. I didn't think that was possible, Hermione said, impressed despite her ethical concerns. The Ministry doesn't want it to be possible, Wednesday corrected. The Addams family has preserved many magical techniques officially classified as lost or impossible. She activated the device, which began drawing silvery strands from the pensieve into its reservoir. Unlike the chaotic swirl of a typical memory extraction, these strands seemed to be selected with surgical precision from the basin's contents. What are you targeting? Luna asked, watching the mesmerizing process. The core memory that connects all others, Wednesday replied. In any memory collection this extensive, there exists a central node, the foundational moment that contextualizes everything else. Dumbledore's primary motivation, Theodore realized. Precisely. As the extraction neared completion, the passage entrance suddenly sealed itself with a heavy grinding sound. Neville jumped back, narrowly avoiding being trapped. Someone's coming, he warned. The castle's shifting to protect us, but that means we've been detected. Wednesday calmly completed the extraction, securing the filled memory syringe in a protective case. We have what we need. The secondary exit should remain viable. She moved to a seemingly blank section of wall and pressed her hand against it. Revelio Fundatorum, she intoned, a revealing spell specifically keyed to the Founder's original architecture. The wall dissolved, revealing a narrow tunnel sloping steeply downward. This leads to the Chamber of Reflection beneath the Great Hall, Wednesday explained. From there, we can access any part of the castle undetected. They filed into the passage just as muffled voices became audible in the chamber behind them. The wall resealed itself once they had all entered, plunging them into darkness until Wednesday conjured a pale blue flame that hovered above her palm. Did we get everything we needed? Hermione asked as they descended through the passage. Enough to understand the truth, Wednesday confirmed. Now we need a secure location to view these memories. Somewhere Dumbledore can't easily access. Luna's dreamy voice drifted from behind them. The Room of Requirement won't work. He knows about it now. Nor the Founder's Vault, Theodore added. It's likely under observation after yesterday's confrontation. We need a location outside Hogwarts entirely, Wednesday concluded. Yet still connected to its magic. Neville, who had been silent during their escape, suddenly spoke up. I know a place. The old gamekeeper's cottage on the far edge of the grounds. It was abandoned when Hagrid took over, but it's still technically part of Hogwarts. Wednesday nodded approvingly. Good suggestion. Its peripheral location means it will be affected by the Charter's magic but not closely monitored by staff. They emerged from the passage into the Chamber of Reflection, a small, octagonal room with walls of polished black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Unlike most of Hogwarts' Gothic architecture, this space felt older, more primal. Another founder's secret, Hermione observed, looking around with scholarly interest. I've never read about this room in any history of Hogwarts. It predates the castle itself, Wednesday explained. A sacred site that existed before the school was built. The founders incorporated it rather than disturbing it. Luna moved to the center of the chamber, where a circular depression in the floor contained what appeared to be perfectly still, mirror-like water. The reflection pool, she identified. My mother mentioned this in her research. It shows the viewer's true magical nature when gazed into. Another tool suppressed by standardized education, Wednesday noted. Individual magical affinities are harder to control than neat categorical divisions. They left the chamber through a different exit, one that led them through a series of increasingly ancient passages before finally emerging behind a stand of ancient yew trees near the edge of the Forbidden Forest. From there, they made their way carefully to the abandoned gamekeeper's cottage Neville had mentioned. The small stone building appeared forgotten by time, its walls covered in climbing vines and its windows clouded with decades of grime. Yet when Wednesday approached the door, it swung open smoothly, as if expecting them. The Charter's magic, she observed. Hogwarts is actively facilitating our investigation now. Inside, the cottage was a single room with a stone fireplace, rudimentary furniture, and thick layers of dust everywhere. With efficient movements, they cleared a space in the center of the room and established basic wards to alert them if anyone approached. Wednesday set up a portable pensieve she had brought in her seemingly bottomless satchel, a smaller, more practical version than Dumbledore's ornate basin, but fully functional for their purposes. We should begin with the central memory, she decided, carefully transferring the contents of the extraction syringe into the pensieve. Then examine the contextual memories to fill in details. Should we all view it together? Hermione asked, eyeing the swirling silver substance with apprehension. Yes, Wednesday replied. What we discover will affect each of us differently. Multiple perspectives will help ensure objective understanding. They gathered around the pensieve, linked hands as Wednesday instructed, and at her signal, lowered their faces to the silvery surface simultaneously. The world dissolved around them, reforming as a scene from decades earlier, a hilltop at night, wind whipping through the grass as two figures faced each other with wands drawn. A younger Albus Dumbledore, his auburn hair and beard streaked with the first signs of silver, stood opposite a handsome man with dark hair and penetrating eyes they recognized from history books as Gellert Grindelwald. This is their legendary duel, Hermione whispered. 1945, but unlike the historical accounts of an epic magical battle, this memory showed something very different. The two wizards weren't fighting but talking intently, their manner suggesting long familiarity. It doesn't have to end this way, Albus, Grindelwald was saying. We both want the same thing, a world where magic is free from arbitrary restrictions. Where wizards don't hide their true nature. Our methods differ too greatly, Gellert, Dumbledore replied, though his tone lacked conviction. You would subjugate muggles. I would simply separate our worlds more effectively. Grindelwald stepped closer. Would you? Have you forgotten our shared vision? For the greater good was your phrase, Albus, not mine. I was young. Idealistic. You were honest, Grindelwald countered. Before you buried your true beliefs beneath layers of political compromise. The scene shifted slightly, still the same hilltop, but now the two wizards stood closer, their previous tension transmuted into something more intimate. "We have a final opportunity," Grindelwald urged. "The Elder Wand recognizes me as its master, but I would share its power with you. Together, we could reshape the magical world according to the original vision, magic practiced freely, without ministry interference or statute restrictions." Dumbledore's expression revealed deep conflict. "And the prophecy? The one about the child who would unite the Hallows?" "We interpret it together," Grindelwald proposed. "Guide events rather than being ruled by them. You've always been the superior strategist, Albus." For a moment, it seemed Dumbledore might agree. Then his expression hardened. "No. There are lines I cannot cross. Even for you." What followed was not the spectacular duel recorded in history books, but something far more personal and devastating. Grindelwald, realizing Dumbledore would not join him, deliberately lowered his guard, a momentary vulnerability that Dumbledore, with visible regret, exploited to disarm him. As the Elder Wand flew from Grindelwald's hand to Dumbledore's, Grindelwald's expression showed not defeat but sad understanding. "You choose the long game, then," he said softly. "Decades of incremental change rather than revolution." "I choose a path that doesn't require immediate sacrifice of innocent lives," Dumbledore replied, though his voice wavered. Grindelwald's laugh held no humor. "No, you choose a path of delayed sacrifice. Less visible, more palatable, but sacrifice nonetheless. You'll see, in time. The prophecies will demand their due, regardless of how gently you try to implement them." The memory shifted again, now showing Dumbledore alone in his office at Hogwarts, years later, examining a familiar prophecy record while making notes in a journal. "The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches," he murmured, his quill scratching across parchment. "Not necessarily through direct confrontation, but perhaps through catalyzing fundamental change." His notes revealed interpretations of the prophecy far different from what had been shared with the Order or with Harry himself. Dumbledore was mapping potential futures, branching paths of implementation that all led toward a transformed wizarding world, one where the statute of secrecy was eventually dissolved, but in a controlled manner over generations rather than through Grindelwald's or Voldemort's violent revolutions. And at the center of these plans, Harry Potter, unwittingly shaped to become not just the defeater of Voldemort, but the linchpin of Dumbledore's long-term vision for wizard-muggle relations. The memory shifted one final time, showing Dumbledore examining the infant Harry's curse scars shortly after his parents' deaths. "A connection I didn't anticipate," he murmured to himself. "But perhaps, yes, perhaps this is fortuitous. The boy will have access to Voldemort's knowledge without requiring direct teaching of controversial magic. A perfect vessel for power without the corrupting influence of traditional dark arts instruction." He placed his wand against the sleeping child's scar. "I seal this connection but don't sever it. Let it develop naturally, a conduit for abilities the ministry would never permit to be taught directly. When the time comes, the boy will have resources beyond what any ordinary magical education could provide." As the memory dissolved, returning them to the dusty gamekeeper's cottage, the five friends stood in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. "Dumbledore's been playing a multi-generational game of wizard chess," Theodore finally said. "With all of us as pieces. He never abandoned his original goal with Grindelwald," Hermione realized, her voice shaking slightly. "Just the methods and timeline. He's been using Harry to access dark magic abilities without technically teaching them," Luna added. "Exploiting the Horcrux connection while pretending to fight against it." Neville looked pale. "And the prophecy, he's been interpreting it to fit his own agenda all along." Wednesday alone seemed unsurprised, though her dark eyes burned with cold intensity. The old man's greatest lie wasn't about Voldemort, or even about Potter specifically. It was about his fundamental vision for the wizarding world. She turned to the collection of memory vials they had brought from Dumbledore's hidden chamber. "These will provide the supporting evidence. Each memory a piece of the larger pattern." Over the next hour, they viewed selected memories that completed the picture. Dumbledore observing Harry's abuse at the Dursleys while noting how it shaped his desperate attachment to the wizarding world. Dumbledore discussing with Snape not just the need to protect Lily's son, but how to ensure Harry develops specific magical affinities through controlled exposure to danger. Dumbledore analyzing the Horcrux connection, recognizing it as an unprecedented opportunity to create a wizard with Voldemort's abilities but different moral foundations. Most disturbing were the memories of Dumbledore's long-term planning sessions with selected Order members who believed in his ultimate vision, gradually preparing the wizarding world for eventual integration with Muggles, with Harry Potter positioned to lead this transition as a uniquely powerful symbol bridging both worlds. "He's been cultivating Harry as his successor," Hermione said, horrified. "Not just to defeat Voldemort, but to eventually implement the greater good vision he originally developed with Grindelwald." "And the supposed prophecy about Harry having to die to defeat Voldemort?" Neville asked. Wednesday indicated a specific memory vial. A calculated interpretation designed to create maximum emotional impact when Harry unexpectedly survives. The perfect narrative to establish him as a messianic figure whose subsequent political positions would be difficult to oppose. Dumbledore's playing both sides of the wizard-muggle debate, Theodore realized. Opposing Voldemort's violent supremacy while quietly working toward a different form of magical dominance, benevolent guidance rather than overt control. All while maintaining his image as the champion of Muggle rights, Wednesday added. The perfect political position, appearing to oppose your actual long-term goals while systematically implementing them through alternative means. Luna stared at the memories swirling in the pensieve. "Harry needs to know." "Yes," Wednesday agreed. "But not through us telling him. He needs to see for himself." "How?" Hermione asked. "Dumbledore will know we've taken these memories. He'll be looking for us." Wednesday's expression remained impassive, but something like satisfaction glinted in her dark eyes. "That's why we need the final component of our plan. A ritual in the Forbidden Forest that temporarily nullifies all magical concealment in Hogwarts." "Is that even possible?" Theodore questioned. "Hogwarts has layers of concealment spells dating back centuries." "With conventional magic, no," Wednesday replied. "But we're not using conventional magic." From her satchel, she produced several objects that made even Luna's eyes widen: a raven's skull with rubies set in its eye sockets, a small vial of silvery liquid that moved with unnatural purpose, and a black candle that appeared to be made from some substance other than wax. "Adam's family ritual components," Wednesday explained. "Brought from home in case of emergency. Combined with the Charter's awakened magic and performed at the precise center of the Forbidden Forest, they can create a temporary window of absolute magical transparency. Every hidden thing becomes visible," Luna realized. "Every concealment spell fails simultaneously. Including memory modifications, magical disguises, and spells affecting perception," Wednesday confirmed. "For a brief period, perhaps 30 minutes, nothing in Hogwarts will remain hidden." Hermione looked troubled. "That could be catastrophic. Some secrets are kept for good reasons." "True revelation doesn't force action," Wednesday countered. "It simply provides complete information for informed choices. What people do with truth is their responsibility." "When do we perform this ritual?" Neville asked, his expression suggesting he was still processing the magnitude of what they were planning. Wednesday glanced out the cottage's grimy window at the sun's position. "Tonight, at the witching hour. When the Charter's third phase reaches full integration. Dumbledore will try to stop us," Theodore pointed out. "Once he realizes his memory vault has been breached, he'll know what we might have discovered. Which is why we need to create a situation he can't control," Wednesday replied. "One that forces transparency regardless of his efforts." Luna's dreamy voice cut through the tension. "We need Harry. Not just to show him the truth, but because his scar, his connection to Voldemort, amplifies magical effects when properly channeled." Wednesday nodded slowly. "An insightful observation. Potter's unique magical signature could indeed strengthen the ritual. The question is whether he'll cooperate." He deserves the chance to choose, Hermione said firmly. After seeing how Dumbledore has manipulated his entire life, we can't justify doing the same. Agreed, Wednesday replied. We present the evidence and allow him to decide. His participation must be voluntary to maintain the ritual's integrity. They spent the remaining daylight hours preparing. Wednesday and Luna constructed the ritual circle using materials from the Forbidden Forest combined with the Addams Family components. Theodore and Neville secured the perimeter of their impromptu headquarters, establishing warning systems to alert them of approach. Hermione organized the memory evidence, creating a sequence that would most clearly demonstrate Dumbledore's true agenda to Harry. As dusk fell, they faced the challenge of contacting Potter without exposing their location or intentions to Dumbledore's surveillance. Thing can deliver a message, Wednesday suggested. He moves through the castle undetected. The sentient hand, which had been assisting with ritual preparations, gave an enthusiastic thumb up at this suggestion. We need to be careful how we phrase it, Hermione cautioned. If it's intercepted, or if Harry discusses it with Ron or others. Simplicity is best, Wednesday decided, writing a brief note on parchment, Potter. Evidence about your scar, your parents, and Dumbledore's true plans. Abandoned Gamekeeper's Cottage, Forest Edge, 9 p.m. Come alone or not at all. Your choice. She didn't sign it, but added a postscript, I solemnly swear this is not a trap, a reference to the Marauder's map that Potter would recognize. Thing took the note and disappeared through a crack in the cottage wall, beginning his stealthy journey back to the castle. Will he come? Neville wondered aloud. His curiosity about his parents is his greatest vulnerability, Wednesday replied. Dumbledore has always controlled access to information about them. The possibility of unfiltered truth will prove irresistible. As they waited, the cottage began to change around them. The charter's third phase was advancing throughout Hogwarts grounds, revealing the building's true nature. Beneath the accumulated grime and neglect, the structure revealed itself as not a simple gamekeeper's dwelling but a much older construction, a druidic observation point from the pre-Hogwarts era, designed to monitor magical currents in the forest. Everything about Hogwarts has layers of concealment, Luna observed, watching as ancient runes became visible in the stone walls. Even the most ordinary buildings have hidden purposes. A metaphor for wizarding society itself, Wednesday noted. Surface appearances masking deeper realities. Convenient fictions maintained to preserve comfortable narratives. At precisely 9 o'clock, the cottage's door opened, and Harry Potter stepped inside, his wand drawn but not raised. His green eyes swept the room, taking in the 5 occupants and the evidence of their recent activities. I got your note, he said simply. What evidence? Wednesday gestured to the pensieve. Memories extracted from Dumbledore's private collection. Concerning you, your connection to Voldemort, and the headmaster's long-term plans. Harry's expression remained guarded. Why should I trust anything you show me? This whole situation reeks of a setup. Because unlike Dumbledore, we're offering you unfiltered information without telling you how to interpret it, Wednesday replied. See for yourself, then make your own judgment. Hermione stepped forward. Harry, I wouldn't be part of this if I wasn't convinced you needed to know. This isn't about house rivalries or school politics. It's about your life. Potter hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. Then his scar pulsed visibly, causing him to wince and press his hand against it. That's been happening all day, he admitted. Since whatever you lot did with that charter thing. The charter's magic is attempting to clarify your connection to Voldemort, Wednesday explained. It recognizes foreign magic embedded in your scar. Embedded. Harry began, then shook his head. Just show me what you found. But I'm keeping my wand ready. A reasonable precaution, Wednesday acknowledged. For the next hour, they guided Harry through selected memories from Dumbledore's collection, focusing on those that most directly revealed the manipulation of his life and the true nature of his scar. They showed him Dumbledore's deliberate placement with abusive relatives to shape his psychology, the controlled revelation of information about his parents, and most critically, the headmaster's knowledge about the Horcrux connection from the very beginning. Harry watched in silence, his expression cycling through shock, anger, betrayal, and finally a cold, focused fury unlike anything his friends had seen from him before. When they emerged from the final memory, Dumbledore discussing with Snape how Harry must believe he needs to die to defeat Voldemort, Harry turned away from them all, his shoulders rigid with tension. He knew, he said, his voice barely audible. He always knew what this scar really was. What it was doing to me. And he just watched. Studied. Like I was some experiment. You were never a person to him, Wednesday stated without inflection. You were a component in a multi-generational plan. The culmination of decades of careful manipulation. Harry turned back to face them, his green eyes blazing. What's this ritual you're planning? The one that reveals everything? Wednesday studied him carefully. A temporary nullification of all magical concealment within Hogwarts. Every hidden thing becomes visible, including the full truth about your scar and Dumbledore's ultimate intentions. Not just for me, Harry clarified. For everyone. The whole school. Yes, Wednesday confirmed. Complete transparency, if only for a limited time. Harry paced the small cottage, obviously processing everything he'd learned. Finally, he stopped and faced them again. I want in, he said firmly. Not just to know the truth about myself, but because everyone deserves to know what's really happening. How they're being used in games they don't even know they're playing. Wednesday nodded once. Your participation will strengthen the ritual considerably. The unique magical signature of your scar acts as a catalyst for revealing magic. When do we do this? Harry asked. Midnight, Wednesday replied. The witching hour, when the Charter's magic reaches its peak integration phase. Harry's expression hardened with resolve. Then let's get ready. The center of the Forbidden Forest at midnight was a place of primordial magic. Ancient energies that predated Hogwarts itself swirled through twisted trees and misty clearings. The forest seemed to pulse with awareness, watching the small group that moved purposefully toward its heart. Wednesday led them unerringly, navigating by signs invisible to the others, slight variations in the thickness of the mist, the direction of growth in the luminescent fungi that clung to rotting logs, the behavior of the forest's nocturnal inhabitants. Thing perched on her shoulder, occasionally signaling warnings or confirmations as they proceeded. Behind her came Harry, his face set with determination despite the forest's oppressive atmosphere. His scar pulsed visibly now, emitting occasional flickers of green light as the Charter's magic interacted with the foreign presence embedded within it. Luna, Hermione, Neville, and Theodore followed, each carrying components for the ritual, Luna with the raven's skull, Hermione with carefully copied memory fragments preserved in crystal vials, Neville with forest elements he'd gathered under Wednesday's instruction, and Theodore with protective talismans crafted from Slytherin's vault materials. They reached their destination just as the pocket watch Wednesday consulted showed 11:30 p.m., a perfect circular clearing that seemed unnaturally even in its dimensions. The forest's heart, Wednesday explained, surveying the space with approval. A natural confluence of ley lines that the founders incorporated into Hogwarts' magical foundation. With practiced efficiency, they established the ritual circle, a complex arrangement of symbols formed from forest materials, Adam's family components, and elements representing each Hogwarts house. At the circle's center, they positioned the pensieve containing the distilled essence of Dumbledore's hidden memories. Each of us represents an aspect of Hogwarts, Wednesday instructed as they took their positions. Neville for Hufflepuff's loyalty, Theodore for Slytherin's ambition, Luna for Ravenclaw's wisdom, Hermione for Gryffindor's courage. What about me? Harry asked. You represent the catalyst, the element that transforms potential into reality, Wednesday explained. Your unique magical signature bridges divisions, just as Dumbledore intended, but for a purpose he never anticipated. And you? Luna asked dreamily. I stand outside conventional categories, Wednesday replied. The Addams family has always existed at the intersection of classifications others consider separate: life and death, light and dark, creation and destruction. As midnight approached, the forest grew unnaturally still. Even the ambient sounds of creatures and wind ceased, creating a silence so profound it felt like pressure against their eardrums. "It's time," Wednesday announced, raising her hands to begin the ritual invocation. But before she could speak the first words, a calm voice interrupted from the edge of the clearing. "An impressive arrangement, Miss Addams. Though I believe you've misunderstood some critical elements of magical harmonics." Albus Dumbledore stepped into the clearing, his long silver hair and beard gleaming in the moonlight. He wore not his usual colorful robes but a simple midnight blue garment that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Headmaster," Wednesday acknowledged, her expression unchanged. "Your timing is precise, as always." "I've had considerable practice with timing," Dumbledore replied, his tone conversational despite the tension crackling in the air. "Though I admit you've accelerated certain events beyond my preferred schedule." His gaze moved to Harry, softening with what appeared to be genuine regret. "Harry, my boy. I see Miss Addams has shared certain memories with you. Without, I suspect, the full context necessary to understand them properly." "I saw enough," Harry replied, his voice hard. "You knew what this was from the beginning." He jabbed a finger at his scar. "You knew I had a piece of him in me, and you just watched it develop. Used it. For your protection and preparation," Dumbledore insisted. "There are forces at work beyond what any of you can comprehend. Decisions made with the weight of generations in mind, not just immediate consequences. The greater good," Wednesday stated flatly. "The same justification you and Grindelwald developed in your youth. The vision you never truly abandoned." Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly. "You've seen more than I anticipated, Miss Addams. Though I shouldn't be surprised. The Addams family has always had an unfortunate talent for uncovering what others wish to remain buried." "Truth wants to be known," Wednesday replied. "It finds those willing to see it." "Truth without wisdom is a dangerous thing," Dumbledore countered. "Which is why I must insist this ritual not proceed. The consequences would be far beyond what any of you intend." Wednesday's dark eyes met Dumbledore's blue ones without flinching. "The Charter's awakening has already set irreversible changes in motion. This ritual merely accelerates the inevitable." "Nothing is inevitable until it occurs," Dumbledore replied. "A lesson I've learned through more than a century of watching history unfold." He raised his wand, not threateningly, but in clear preparation. "Please dismantle this circle before I'm forced to intervene directly." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Harry stepped forward, positioning himself between Dumbledore and Wednesday. "No," he said simply. "I want to know everything. Not just about me, but about all of it, what you've been planning, what you've kept hidden from everyone." "Harry," Dumbledore said softly, "there are some truths for which you're not yet prepared." "That's not your decision to make anymore," Harry replied. "It never should have been." Before Dumbledore could respond, a surge of magic pulsed through the clearing, not from any of them, but from Hogwarts itself. The Charter's third phase had reached completion, sending a wave of revelatory energy through every part of the castle grounds, including the forest. Wednesday, recognizing the opportunity, began the ritual incantation without further delay. The others joined instantly, each speaking the part Wednesday had prepared them for. Even Harry, who had only learned his role hours earlier, delivered his lines with perfect timing. Dumbledore moved to interrupt, but found himself unable to cross an invisible boundary that had formed around the ritual circle, not a conventional magical barrier, but something more fundamental. "The forest itself protects us," Wednesday explained between incantations. "It recognizes our intent aligns with the Charter's original purpose, truth freely available to all who seek it." The components at the circle's center began to glow, first the pensieve, then the raven's skull, then the other ritual elements. Light spread outward along lines etched in the forest floor, forming a complex pattern that mirrored the architectural layout of Hogwarts above. Revelium Omnium, Wednesday intoned, completing the central incantation. Let all that is hidden be seen. Let all that is obscured be clear. Let truth prevail over concealment. Harry's scar erupted with brilliant green light that shot upward like a beacon, connecting with the magic spreading from the ritual circle. The two energies intertwined, amplifying each other into a wave of pure revealing power that expanded outward in all directions. As the wave reached Dumbledore, his appearance shimmered. The grandfatherly facade remained, but now they could also see the strategic mastermind beneath, the cold calculation, the ruthless pragmatism, the absolute conviction in his own judgment. Not evil, but something perhaps more dangerous, a good man who had convinced himself that his ends justified any means. You see only fragments, Dumbledore said quietly as his deeper nature became visible. Pieces without the pattern that gives them meaning. We see enough, Wednesday replied. The pattern reveals itself to those willing to observe without preconceptions. The ritual reached its crescendo as midnight struck. The combined magic of the awakened charter, the revealing ritual, and Harry's catalytic energy created a moment of perfect magical transparency that washed over Hogwarts in its entirety. Throughout the castle, concealment spells failed. Hidden rooms became visible. Disguised intentions revealed themselves. Forgotten knowledge resurfaced in the minds of those who had been subjected to memory modifications. Most significantly, the subtle magical influences that had been guiding students and staff toward predetermined perspectives and affinities dissolved, allowing each person to perceive their true magical nature for the first time. In the ritual clearing, the magical surge manifested as a swirling vortex of memories and revelations, images from Dumbledore's hidden collection projected into the air around them, visible to all present. They saw the complete prophecy about Harry, the full extent of Dumbledore's long-term plan for the wizarding world's eventual integration with Muggle society, and most damning of all, his deliberate shaping of Harry's life experiences to create the perfect transitional figure. You planned for me to become your successor, Harry realized, staring at the projected memories. To continue implementing your vision after you're gone. A vision of peace, Dumbledore insisted. Of magical freedom without the violence Voldemort or Grindelwald would unleash. A measured transition over generations rather than catastrophic revolution. Without my consent, Harry countered. Without anyone's informed consent. You decided for all of us. Sometimes one must, Dumbledore replied, and for the first time, his voice carried an edge of steel beneath the gentle exterior. When the alternatives are so much worse. Wednesday watched this exchange with analytical detachment. The fundamental flaw in your approach, headmaster, is not your ultimate goal but your methodological assumption that deception is necessary to achieve it. My methods reflect reality, Miss Adams, Dumbledore replied. People fear what they don't understand. Change must be managed carefully. Fear thrives in ignorance, Wednesday countered. Truth, however uncomfortable initially, provides the only stable foundation for genuine progress. As they spoke, the ritual's effect continued to spread, revealing Dumbledore's most carefully guarded secret of all, his endgame for the wizarding world. Not domination of Muggles as Voldemort desired, nor complete separation as the Ministry maintained, but a carefully orchestrated revelation of magical existence to the Muggle world, implemented over decades through strategic positioning of key figures like Harry Potter. You wanted controlled disclosure, Hermione realized, watching the projected plans with growing comprehension. Not hiding forever, not ruling over Muggles, but eventually bringing the worlds together on wizarding terms. With magical society maintaining guidance over the integration process, Dumbledore acknowledged. Preventing chaos while preserving magical traditions. Benevolent superiority, Wednesday translated. Different from Voldemort's vision in method rather than fundamental principle. The ritual reached its predetermined 30-minute duration, the revealing magic beginning to recede. But before it could completely dissipate, an unexpected development occurred. Harry's scar, still emitting its eerie green light, suddenly pulsed with renewed intensity. Something's happening, he gasped, pressing his hand against his forehead. It feels like it's trying to get out. Wednesday moved swiftly to Harry's side. The revealing magic is affecting the Horcrux directly. The foreign soul fragment can't maintain its concealment under this level of magical transparency. A highly dangerous situation, Dumbledore warned, genuine alarm replacing his usual composed demeanor. The Horcrux cannot simply be expelled without proper containment. The consequences could be catastrophic. But Wednesday was already adapting the ritual, redirecting its energy to focus specifically on Harry's scar. The Addams family has considerable experience with soul fragmentation, she informed them, her hands moving in precise patterns. Though usually in the context of voluntary ancestral consultation rather than hostile possession. Luna joined her efforts instinctively, her natural affinity for soul magic activated by the Charter's influence. Together, they created a controlled channel for the Horcrux's energy, directing it toward the raven's skull at the center of the ritual circle. "What are you doing?" Dumbledore demanded, recognizing the sophisticated necromancy they were implementing. Providing appropriate containment, Wednesday replied without pausing her work. The raven's skull is designed to temporarily house displaced spiritual entities. Harry fell to his knees, the pain evidently intense as the ritual pulled at the soul fragment embedded in his scar. But his expression showed determination rather than fear. "Get it out," he ground out through clenched teeth. With a final surge of magical energy, the Horcrux separated from Harry, a writhing mass of darkness that screamed with inhuman rage as it was drawn inexorably into the waiting raven's skull. The ruby eyes of the skull flared with malevolent red light, then settled into a dull glow as containment wards activated automatically. Harry collapsed, breathing heavily but visibly relieved. His scar, which had been an angry red throughout the ritual, now appeared as a simple silver line, still visible but no longer magically active. "Impossible," Dumbledore whispered, staring at the contained Horcrux. The prophecy indicated. That prophecy, like all prophecies, was subject to interpretation, Wednesday stated, helping Harry to his feet. "Your particular interpretation suited your long-term plans, but it wasn't the only valid reading." The ritual's effects were fading now, the revealing magic returning to its source in the awakened Charter. But the revelations it had brought remained, knowledge that could not be unlearned, truths that could not be reburied. Dumbledore looked suddenly older, the weight of his many secrets now visible in his bearing. "You cannot understand the forces you've set in motion," he said quietly. "The delicate balance that has been disrupted." "Perhaps not entirely," Wednesday acknowledged. "But I understand this, systems built on concealment eventually collapse under their own contradictions. The wizarding world's approach to education, to Muggle relations, to classification of magic, all were becoming increasingly unsustainable. And you believe sudden, uncontrolled revelation is preferable?" Dumbledore challenged. "I believe informed choice is essential," Wednesday replied. "Your error was not in pursuing integration between magical and non-magical worlds, but in assuming only you could be trusted with that vision's implementation." As dawn approached, they gathered their ritual components and prepared to return to the castle. The contained Horcrux in the raven's skull would require proper disposal, something Wednesday assured them the Addams family was uniquely qualified to handle. "What happens now?" Harry asked as they left the clearing, Dumbledore following at a distance, his expression unreadable. "With the school, with Voldemort, with everything?" "The Charter's awakening has created an inflection point," Wednesday replied. "Hogwarts will never return to its previous state of restricted magical education. The revealing ritual has exposed manipulations too fundamental to simply reinstate." "And Dumbledore's position?" Hermione asked quietly. "Compromised, but not destroyed," Wednesday assessed. "He's too skilled a political operator to be completely undermined by a single night of revelations. He'll adapt, reframe his narrative, possibly even position himself as having intended this outcome all along." "That's frustrating," Harry admitted. "But no longer effective," Wednesday pointed out. "His methods relied on information control. Without that asymmetry, his influence becomes proportional to his argument's actual merit rather than his carefully cultivated image. As they emerged from the forest, Hogwarts came into view, and the castle had transformed yet again. The architecture remained the same, but the magical aura surrounding it had shifted dramatically. The school now pulsed with a vibrant, diverse energy that reflected the charter's fully awakened state. Students and staff were gathered outside despite the early hour, many looking dazed or excited or both. Some were demonstrating magical abilities they'd never accessed before, while others pored over books that had apparently appeared in the library overnight, texts on magical disciplines long considered lost or forbidden. Professor McGonagall approached them as they reached the edge of the grounds, her expression a complex mixture of exasperation and reluctant respect. "Miss Adams," she acknowledged with a tight nod. "The Board of Governors has called an emergency session. Your presence is requested, along with Mr. Potter's and the headmaster's." "Of course," Wednesday replied calmly. "I anticipated their interest in recent developments." "Recent developments," McGonagall repeated with arch understatement. "Is that what we're calling the complete restructuring of a 1,000-year-old educational institution overnight?" "I prefer restoration to original operating parameters," Wednesday replied. McGonagall's lips twitched despite her obvious effort to maintain a stern demeanor. "Well, whatever you call it, the wizarding world will never be the same. The Charter's influence is already spreading beyond Hogwarts. The Ministry's in an uproar, St. Mungo's reports spontaneous recovery in certain spell damage cases, and Gringotts has announced the lifting of restrictions on certain branches of financial magic. The natural consequence of removing artificial constraints," Wednesday noted. "Magic seeks equilibrium when allowed to flow freely." As they walked toward the castle, Harry fell into step beside Wednesday. "You planned all of this from the beginning, didn't you? From the moment you arrived at Hogwarts?" "Not the specifics," Wednesday admitted. "But the general outcome, yes. The Addams family has opposed magical suppression for generations. My transfer to Hogwarts was purposeful. Your family sent you here specifically to disrupt Dumbledore's plans," Harry realized. "To correct a historical imbalance," Wednesday clarified. "The Addams family maintains neutrality in most wizarding conflicts, but the progressive restriction of magical knowledge affects all practitioners eventually. It needed to be addressed." As they reached the castle entrance, Dumbledore finally rejoined them, having apparently taken a different path from the forest. His usual twinkle was absent, replaced by a measured calculation as he assessed the transformed school before him. "Impressive work, Miss Adams," he said quietly. "Destructive in many ways, but impressive nonetheless." "Not destruction," Wednesday corrected. "Reconstruction. The difference is significant." Dumbledore studied her with new respect. "The Addams perspective on magical theory has always been unique. I see now I underestimated its practical applications." "A common error," Wednesday replied. "One the wizarding world has made repeatedly regarding knowledge it chooses not to understand rather than engage with." The Great Hall had become the center of activity, with students and teachers gathering to discuss the revelations of the night. The founder's table at the center remained, now filled with students from all houses engaged in animated conversation. Most notably, the castle ghosts had gathered in unprecedented numbers, floating above the assembled crowd with expressions of satisfaction. The Grey Lady caught Wednesday's eye and inclined her head in formal acknowledgement. The magical atmosphere within Hogwarts had fundamentally shifted. Where before there had been subtle currents of competition and division, now there flowed a more harmonious energy, not erasing differences between houses or individuals, but allowing those differences to complement rather than conflict. As they moved through the hall toward the antechamber where the Board of Governors waited, students called out to Harry and Wednesday alike. Some seemed confused or overwhelmed by the night's revelations, but most displayed excitement about the new magical possibilities suddenly available to them. Neville was already deep in conversation with Professor Sprout about plant communication techniques previously classified as questionable magic. Luna had joined Ravenclaw students exploring newly accessible books on thought projection. Hermione was systematically documenting the changes in a journal, creating what would undoubtedly become a valuable historical record of the transformation. Theodore had been cornered by his fellow Slytherins, many demanding explanations for his involvement. But instead of defensiveness, he spoke with newfound confidence about the value of magical preservation beyond political agendas. Miss Adams, called Professor Flitwick, hurrying toward them with uncharacteristic excitement. The Charms classroom has transformed itself overnight. Ancient teaching tools not seen in centuries have appeared, and the ceiling now displays magical theory diagrams that respond to students' questions. The castle is returning to its original educational design, Wednesday explained. The founders created Hogwarts as an adaptive learning environment, not just a static structure. Before they reached the antechamber, Harry pulled Wednesday aside for a final private word. "Thank you," he said simply. "For the truth. All of it, even the parts that hurt." Wednesday regarded him steadily. "Truth often does. The Addams family considers pain educational rather than something to be avoided." "I'm starting to see the value in that approach," Harry admitted. Then, with a hint of his usual humor, he added, "though I'm not ready to start experimenting with that electric chair your cousin apparently enjoys." "Pugsley has unique recreational preferences," Wednesday acknowledged. "The important thing is that you now have choices based on complete information. Your path forward belongs to you, not to Dumbledore's grand design." Harry nodded, a new resolution in his green eyes. "I still want to defeat Voldemort. That hasn't changed. But now I'll do it my way, not as a piece in someone else's chess game." "As it should be," Wednesday replied. As they entered the antechamber to face the Board of Governors, Wednesday felt a rare sense of satisfaction. Hogwarts had been returned to its true purpose. The artificial boundaries between magical disciplines were dissolving. Students were discovering their genuine affinities rather than being channeled into predetermined categories. Most importantly, the cycle of manipulation and concealment that had defined wizarding education for generations had been broken. Whatever emerged from the current chaos would be built on a foundation of transparency rather than convenient fictions. The old man's greatest lie had been exposed, and with it, countless smaller deceptions that had calcified into a system of control masquerading as protection. The truth, in all its uncomfortable complexity, now flowed freely through Hogwarts' ancient stones. Wednesday Addams had completed her family's mission. And somewhere in the ancestral Addams mansion, she knew her parents were watching with macabre pride as their daughter reshaped the future of magical education through the simple, devastating power of unvarnished truth. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.